don't die for the next 10 years, please. Because if you live 10 years, you're gonna live another 5 years. If you live 15 years, you're gonna live another 50 years because we're gonna solve the aging.
Please live long enough until we fix this.
Exactly.
Science behind it all, and Derya Unutmaz joins me now. He's an immunologist at the
Derya Unutmaz. Derya, thanks so much for your time.
I don't think there's any problem that we will not be able to solve with AI. I think that this is sort of like a turning point in human history. Maybe this might be the biggest discovery since the beginning of civilization.
But as a society, do you think we are ready for what is coming?
I think the answer is no, unfortunately. The whole fabric of society will change, and I don't think we're ready for it.
How long do you think we have before things change too much?
The most conservative, I would say 5 years, but I don't think 5 years.
Do you think cancer is going to be healed by AI or by doctors?
I think with AI, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to cure every single cancer. I mean, every single disease. There's not going to be any disease that will not be cured or treatable. I think this year is the agent year, and that's going to make AI go mainstream. If we don't do it, the China will do it. Somebody's going to keep developing this at full speed. It's actually a national security issue, because if you don't have AI, you will not be able to defend yourself. And in fact, it's not really up to us, because the genie is out of the box. I mean, ASI, I would be really worried. AGI, I'm not really worried. So that would be easy. But once you have ASI, we have no control.
La inteligencia artificial va a ayudar muchísimo a la ciencia, pero ¿va a ser capaz de curar el cáncer, el Alzheimer, el Parkinson o todas estas enfermedades degenerativas con las que convivimos día a día? El doctor Derya Unutmaz cree que sí, y él es uno de los científicos más importantes del mundo en estos campos. De hecho, es tan importante que es uno de los 10 elegidos por OpenAI para testear sus modelos de razonamiento aplicados a la ciencia. El doctor Derya cree que la inteligencia artificial ha venido a salvar a la humanidad. Y a alguien como yo, bastante pesimista en general, puede que le venga muy bien escuchar las palabras de alguien que realmente no solo sabe del tema, sino que cree que de verdad la inteligencia artificial nos va a salvar a todos. Derya, before we get into medicine and all the fields that you can really give us lots of really interesting information, I want to know, what is your opinion about AI? Do you think this is something good for us?
So my personal opinion is that it's going to be amazing. I think that this is sort of like a turning point in human history. Maybe this might be the biggest discovery since the beginning of civilization. I mean, it's that level.
That's a big statement.
Yeah, it's a big statement, but I've been thinking a lot about this for many years, and using AI, and I can see the incredible impact it's going to do, and we'll talk about it, and mostly it's going to be in medicine, biology. I don't think there's any problem that we will not be able to solve with AI. My outlook is including aging, by the way. So
okay, that's interesting. We'll talk about longevity as well later on. But as a society, do you think we are ready for what is coming?
So I think the answer is no, unfortunately. And one of the things I've been trying to do, in social media, especially in X and Twitter, really trying to tell people that this is big. This is like a big storm, and I don't think this society is ready for it. 99.9% of the people have no clue what the capabilities of AI are. I mean, people have heard of ChatGPT. Even my mom uses this. I told her how to use it, and she tells me that she cannot live without ChatGPT anymore. But I think in terms of employment, in terms of what it means to be human, our intelligence, our art, our feelings. I mean, you can just extend that, and the whole fabric of society will change. And I don't think we're ready for it. That's the problem.
It's complicated to grasp the size of the opportunity, and it's very easy to miss it. No, it's very easy to make it wrong, because it's a very big deal.
Exactly, and in fact, it's not just the common person. I mean, I don't see major efforts from governments, from institutions, from universities. I have friends in high places, and I keep telling them, like, you have to meet almost every day and try to plan the next couple of days. And there's not much time. That's the problem. I mean,
it's
most changes.
really fast, no?
Exactly. I mean, when internet started, it probably about a decade before it was really, within the public. But this is going to be much faster.
How long do you think we have before things change too much?
I mean, the most conservative, I would say 5 years, but I don't think 5 years.
Wow.
So that's like
that's fast.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back before we get deeper into that. How did you start getting in touch with AI?
So, when I was a child, when I was a sort of a teenager, I got very interested in computers. This was early 80s. The computers were just coming out, and my first computer was called Commodore 64. It had 64 kilobytes of memory, so it's not even, you couldn't even fit an email to it. So I was very excited because here is a tool that you can literally tell it to do something and it does it for you. So I learned how to code, and I was doing programming. I got into the games and so on. And then I went to medical school, but I maintained my interest in computers. And early 90s, I read this book from Ray Kurzweil, who's really one of the sort of the prophets of future, I would say. He wrote this book called The Age of Intelligent Machines. As the title implies, he was predicting more than 30 years ago that there's going to be a time when artificial intelligence will be so powerful, it will be actually surpass our intelligence. And then we'll have robots everywhere. So that was the machine part. I started to think about that, and I said, wow, this could really happen. You could see that the computation power is increasing and doubling and so on. And then actually late 90s, he wrote follow-up books, and then early 2000s, a book he titled Singularity is Near. And so he defined singularity as a time when you cannot predict anymore the future. The future is advancing so fast because of AI that we don't know what's going to happen even tomorrow. And his timeline was around 2045 or so. And then he made some very specific predictions. He said, if I plot the increasing computation power, I can see that by year 2029, we're going to have what's called, artificial general intelligence, which means that AI is going to be smarter than most humans. And then soon after, it's going to be super intelligence. In fact, recently, Ray said, I was not optimistic enough. He thinks that it's going to happen quicker.
It's crazy because he's been like a Nostradamus of the technology, and he's really been like spot on everything.
He's been spot on. And I have to say, 20, 25 years ago, people were like, no, come on, this guy's crazy.
Exactly.
How could that happen?
Took him for crazy, and he was spot on. And actually, it seems like he was not optimistic enough because it's going to maybe happen sooner.
Exactly.
When do you think we're going to have AGI?
If you asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said about 2029, 2030. But since then, I had to lower my prediction. And the latest, after OpenAI released didn't release, but announced this O3 model, my current prediction is we're going to have AGI probably this year by 80% chance.
Wow.
If not this year, next year by 95% chance.
Because AGI is basically I think the common definition that we can all agree on is an AI that can do most of productive work that humans do. But does it refer, because that's something I've been talking a lot lately, and my opinion has been shifting, because it seems almost impossible, incredible that we can have it this year or next year. And then I understood maybe that they mean they will have something with the capabilities, not scaled to actually do it, but with the capabilities. Is that right? Is like AGI, are we talking about something in a computer that costs a ton of money, like on the O3, for example, on the ARC AGI test, they said it was costing around $3,000 every prompt.
Right.
Of course, that's not something I can use in my daily life to make 200 decisions a day.
Right.
So are we talking about AGI in the lab, or are we talking about AGI in the world?
I think, in the lab for sure, how much of that is going to get adapted to the world, as you said, it depends on, the efficiency of the computation and
infrastructure,
the computation.
scalability.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, the moment that you have it in the lab, it's just a matter of time after that. The cost of using GPTs have been, I think, 100-fold over since last 2 years. So, and I'm sure that's going to happen with O3, and then there's a lot of competition now. So, OpenAI is not the only one. We're waiting for Grok 3, which people say is going to be better than O3 model of OpenAI. And we don't know what Chinese are doing. They released this DeepSeek model, which is quite amazing. And it costs like $5 million to do it.
Yeah,
so
that's insane. And
insane.
without having the proper GPUs because they have an embargo.
Exactly. So Jensen, the NVIDIA's CEO, he was saying that basically now we are in an accelerated acceleration.
Yeah.
So before there was this Moore's law, the computation speed increase every 18 months. Now he's saying like, we're increasing this every 6 months. And actually the intelligence is increasing every 3 months or so.
Wow.
So even if it did every 6 months, you can, just fast forward 5 years, that's 1,000-fold increase in intelligence.
Totally.
10 years is 1,000,000-fold. So, and I think it's going to keep accelerating because what happens is that AI is getting so good, it basically perpetuates its own advances. People who are developing AGI are now using AI, and then
to
once
help
you have
themselves to develop better AIs.
Exactly.
So it's basically like getting to the point where we say in Spain, we say that the fish is biting the tail. So basically it's a full circle.
Exactly. I mean, in biology, there's a great example for that. There are these proteins we call enzymes, right? So what the enzyme does is that you have to have a chemical reaction. Usually chemical reactions are not very fast. But the biological system finds a particular protein that accelerates that by about 1,000-fold, sometimes 1,000,000-fold, that chemical reaction. And then that becomes a cascade of events. Then you get more and more and more. So I think that's how our intelligence evolved. And I don't see any limit.
You didn't see a wall, no?
No, there are no walls.
If there was a wall, I think...
I mean, the walls, of course, there will be some walls, but those walls are not... impenetrable. So, what you do is that, okay, so there's now a wall maybe in pre-training. Okay, now we go into the post-training and things like that.
Test time compute.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the difference. But going back to the root of this, like, how do you see AI in a personal level? You are like really optimistic, I would say, on the amazingness of the technology. But at the same time, you said society is not ready. So is this good or is this bad? Because of course it feels like the technology is amazing, but if it doesn't help us because we are not ready and it just goes over us like a fast train, it's not going to be very good. So how do you think things going to go?
So you're absolutely right. I'm not one of those people, what I would call sort of AI doomers. Maybe that's not the right word, but there are a number of people, including one of the sort of godfathers of immunology, Hinton. He claims that AI will destroy us. I don't believe that, and we can go into the reasons of it. But having said that, AI is a very, very destructive force. Actually, Steve Jobs called it creative destruction. So when he was developing, let's say, iPod, he was actually creatively destroying the whole music industry. Right? So you wouldn't have any more records. And when he had the iPhone, he was destroying, communications and so on. But then he was creating something completely new that made our lives much better. Internet did that in many ways. You don't see a Blockbuster where you can go and rent a VHS movie. So it's going to be similar, except this is going to be probably 1,000 times more in the scale, and then maybe 100,000 times more faster. That's why the society is not ready for it, because especially this year when we start having agents, as you know, they're probably going to come out. Essentially, you can automate, 50% of the white-collar work easily. This includes, very high-paying jobs like lawyers and some of the doctors and computer engineers, and so actually just yesterday, Salesforce, the big company, they said, well, they're not going to hire any more computer engineers this year because their systems are 30% more efficient, and next year is going to be 50% more efficient. So they're going to actually reduce the number. So that's the thing that we're not ready, because it's such a force that's coming. What it will replace is going to be amazing. So I'm hoping that soon enough we will get to the abundance point where people will not have to worry about even working, because if every job is done by robots and AI, which costs almost nothing,
and if energy goes down to zero, then
everything is abundant. But it's going to take a while to get there. Maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades. So how do we go through that?
That's my biggest problem. Like, it's the transition. Because if you think about the Industrial Revolution, we are much better off now than we were before. But I would not have wanted to live through it, because probably was pretty bad for people who was working in a factory when the Industrial Revolution arrived.
And it didn't happen this fast.
Exactly. And the problem is, are we going to let this happen? And here is the dilemma, no? Like, you let it happen ASAP, so basically you get the fruits of it as soon as possible, or we have to delay it so we can transition into it in the less painful way possible. It's kind of taking off a band-aid, no? It's like, what is the best way, slowly or fast?
Exactly.
It's complicated.
Delaying it has a big cost, because again, we'll probably discuss that in more detail. AI is going to allow us to maybe treat every disease. It's going to save the lives of billions of people. We'll let them, I want my mom to live longer. There's not much time. She's an old person. So if we get these advancements a couple of years later, that could be
too late.
It could be too late for her. And same for tens of millions of people. And so to solve our problems, we have to be fast. And in fact, it's not really up to us, because the genie is out of the box. If we don't do it, the China will do it. If China doesn't do it, India is going to do it. Somebody's going to keep developing this at full speed. U.S. has an advantage right now, and I think Europe is really backwards in that regard. But it's actually a national security issue. Because if you don't have AI, you will not be able to defend yourself.
This was declared national security in October 24th. I think it's going to be a date that we will remember for history books.
Exactly.
Where the US actually declared it a national security. And I think it definitely makes a big difference, because this is something that definitely gives it the seriousness. Like, I had to talk to many people. This is not the metaverse. This is not crypto. This is not blockchain. This is something completely different. You have to compare it to the wheel, or to the
fire, or electricity.
To electricity. You cannot talk in the terms of the latest technology or mobile phones. People think mobile phones change our lives. Our life did not change that much with mobile phones, even if it did a lot. But what is coming is much bigger, and I think people is not really aware of what it's going to be. But it's a dilemma. I think it's a really
I think instead of thinking to slow it down, we should think of how do we prevent the problems that are going to arise from this. People are discussing about what's called the UBI, the Universal Basic Income. I'm sure there's going to be lots of other ideas, but the thing is, these need to be discussed now. Exactly. By the governments,
it takes time to implement it in case we decide. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking that the UVI, maybe we need it in 10 years, maybe we need it in 5. I don't know how it's going to go the development, but the reality is that even if we need it in 10 years, it should start talking now, because it's going to take us 10 years to make it right. So if we wait until 7 years later to start talking about it, we will be too late again. So I think this is the biggest problem, that we tend to fix on the problems of right now and not of the problems of tomorrow that are normally more important. So it's a challenging times, isn't it?
It's a very challenging time.
But if you defend that the AI is good, I think is that you have seen more than most of people. So I want to get into and dive into your relationship with OpenAI, because you are one of the lucky ones. You've been one of the 10 chosen by OpenAI to be kind of like testing the latest. Have you had access to AGI? No, seriously. It's what is it this program consists of? Why are you guys helping OpenAI with?
So actually, my relationship with OpenAI started just when they were releasing. Actually, they haven't even released the O1 preview, or they were about to. And at the time, I was trying to demonstrate what a great thing GPT-4 was in science and medicine, and they contacted me. Saying that they can give me sort of unlimited access to the O1 preview, which soon after was also released, but it was kind of limiting. You could only use it like 50 times a week or something like that. And so I was the lucky one, so I could use it as much as I want. So and that was amazing. So I actually wrote several projects on cancer and things like that. And then, fast forward another month, they decided to, give me access to O1 Pro, and they said they were going to also announce that we're giving this to about 10 scientists in the world, and you're going to be one of them. So you can have unlimited use. Even if they didn't give me, I would pay $200 to subscribe for sure.
I pay them too because I think it's amazing.
Exactly. So, and then, I'm hoping I'll have early access to O3 as well, although that testing hasn't yet started, so maybe in the next couple of weeks. But even with O1 preview, when I started testing this, I was like blown away. It was just unbelievable.
So let's dip into that. Like O1, they are the test time compute models. Like Noam Brown has talked about it in the TED Talk, and everyone has seen, I think, or most of people have seen it. Basically, are AI models that they think before answering. Is that a correct response, or they reason before answering? They make a process of thinking the best path to reach an optimal answer, and that improves them a lot. But as far as we know, thanks to some of the Chinese papers, basically it's the same model, which would be, I guess, GPT-4. I don't know if you have any more information.
It's actually using GPT-4,
It's GPT-4, but with a specific algorithm and training to basically make it think before answering.
Yeah.
Why is it so much better?
So,
on a practical, not on an LLM side, but on a practical side.
So, before O1 model, I was using GPT-4. I mean, it increased my productivity greatly. So, for example, I would obviously ask questions, but let's say I'm writing a project, I would just copy and paste it there and say, improve this, the wording, and, find some things that are missing and things like that. And it was fantastic for that. But when I started using O1 preview and then O1 Pro, which is like much better than the regular O1, that I could see that it was starting to get creative. It was coming up with ideas that I hadn't thought about, but it made perfect sense. And this is like within my own domain. I have certain expertise in immunology, in cancer biology. And so I was asking, so I want to ask very specific question about some immune cell type and how I can develop that against cancer, and, what kind of gene changes I could do. And GPT-4 would respond to that. But what it would do is that it would take what's already out there, kind of synthesize, and then I might miss some papers, but it was not giving me anything really creative.
So it was kind of like a librarian that was going through everything that we already
know,
and bringing it on the table in certain order and synthesized, but not bringing any new ideas.
Right. So let me give you one example, which I think I mentioned about that when O1 preview came out. So, one of the ideas that I was thinking, so what I'm working on is that we take these immune cells, which we call T cells. These are like the soldiers of the body. And we train them in the laboratory so that they can recognize cancer cells, because cancer cells are kind of like terrorists. They're within our own cells, but have a little bit of difference. So normally the immune system doesn't recognize them. But we could force the immune system to recognize them. And then if they recognize it as an enemy, they will kill those cancer cells, and which can work extremely well in curing some of the cancers. But the problem is that cancer tries to avoid that and comes up with its own defenses, and so causes these T cells to be exhausted, and they after a while they lose their capabilities. Not all of them, but most of them. So it occurred to me, maybe I should. I like video games a lot. Okay. Are you familiar with the Battle Royale games?
Yeah, I'm a gamer myself.
Okay. So I played those kind of games, and I said, well, in a battle royale game, so you are sort of fighting to be the best, and why don't I create a scenario that the immune cells would compete with each other, and then the best ones would be chosen, and the worst ones would be eliminated, so that those would kill the tumors better. So that was like a conceptual idea, and I said, well, let me ask that to 01 Preview, what it would say, because it's a completely different topic, right? So one of the ideas of artificial general intelligence is that can you take a completely unrelated topic and generalize it to science or something else? And all I said is, I want you to develop some new cancer therapy using immune system, but be inspired by battle royale games. That's all I said. And it took about, 2 minutes or something like that. And it started to output all these ideas. And, saying, if you genetically engineer the T cells in this way, then they could recognize themselves, and the ones that are weak will be killed by the other ones, so that the better T cells will be selected, and you can make them secrete certain proteins, and so they would compete with because like in a battle royale you have to find ammunition and resources, and so compete with the resources in the tumor environment. And I mean, it was on and on and on. I was like shocked. Some of those ideas I had also thought about, but there were one or two ideas that I didn't think about.
And these things are not in the internet. So
no, they're not internet. Just to be clear, such idea has not been published.
It's absolutely crazy. There is people that still thinks that this is like Google on asteroids, and it's definitely not. It's just a whole different thing.
Exactly. And in fact, we're actually doing experiments suggested by 01. And I thought I was so smart. I came up with these ideas, from video games to cancer immunology, and then seeing. In fact, there was a reporter from Bloomberg who asked me, what did you think about 01 Preview? I told her, I said, I got emotional when I saw the output of 01 Preview, because I felt like, oh my God, here is something that's really thinking innovative ideas.
This is the point where you maybe realized that this is going to change the world?
I was pretty sure, but before that I was saying, we'll probably have another 5 years or maybe 7-8 years.
We may hit a wall.
Yeah, we might hit a wall, and it's going to improve. But after 01, I said, okay, this is another level. And then 01 Preview took it even a much higher level.
The 01 Pro, no?
01 Pro, I'm sorry. Yeah.
What is the main difference between 01 Pro and 01 normal? Now we have the full 01. And we have the 01 Pro for those that are listening to us. The 01 Pro, it's only accessible to the accounts that pay $200 a month. And we can also use on that accounts the 01 Unlimited. Yeah. But the accounts that pay the $25, they can only use 50 messages per week.
Right.
What is the difference between 01 and 01 Pro?
So let me say it this way: 01 is more like like a very advanced PhD or a PhD student. Let's say a top PhD student.
That's a lot already. Like, where will you place GPT-4? Like a regular
GPT-4 would be like maybe a junior, average PhD student.
Okay.
In some cases, but not all. But 01 is really kind of like a top PhD student, or a star. 01 Pro is basically similar to my position. Is a professor. When I talk to 01 Pro, I discuss things as if I have in front of me someone who has 30 years of experience in immunology, who's a professor, who had been professor at NYU or something like that, where I would brainstorm, really very specific ideas, and and in fact, that's what we do as scientists. We talk to other colleagues, so it's really at a very high level, expert level.
Because this is really incredible, because it's not only like that only a handful of humans are at that point, but it's also that it's like completely on all fields, not only on
Absolutely.
your field, because of course it's hard enough for someone to be a professor like you are in one field. But now, of course, if we think about every single field that we can imagine, almost all of them, these models, they can actually respond at that level. So it's basically really insane.
I mean, in math, in computer science, in any field you can imagine. And again, to give you an example with O1 Pro, which I also mentioned in Twitter, a couple of weeks ago, actually, it was last month, I uploaded one of my papers, which was a very specific topic. It was a subset of these T cells, called mate cells. Very few people in the world are working on them. And, I consider myself maybe one of the top 5 people who really understands that. We discovered some of the things about these T cells and so on. So we wrote a very extensive review. And I said, O1 Pro, why don't you read this and tell me if I missed something? I was very confident. How could I miss something, right? So I'm like a world expert on this. And then again, it thought about 2-3 minutes, and then it came up, I think it was 8 or 9 points. And each one of them are unbelievably insightful. I was like, oh my God, how did I miss this? And the paper was also reviewed by other experts.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was like, approved with very minor modifications. They say, oh, this is one of the greatest papers, reviews we've read. And I was almost embarrassed. I said, oh my God, I missed all these things. It was just because you can miss information, you can miss knowledge. You can say, okay, well, if you ask that to GPT-4 or O1, it probably will tell you, well, you forgot to include somebody's paper they published in, whatever 7 years ago, and that could happen.
I will not think out of the box for things that you may not have
Exactly. I mean, these were insightful points where you have to really think and speculate. What could happen. They're not like already known knowledge. It was actually, the other thing that really super impressed me is that it had an understanding of temporal events, which I hadn't seen before with any of the AI models. What I mean by temporal, it was thinking, well, something will happen if you do this. Maybe a day later or a month later, this might happen. It was thinking ahead of the events, just like this is our biggest thing about human intelligence, right? We can think of future because we have a temporal breadth that discriminates from animals, and that's how it was. Like it was telling me, okay, well, you taught about this, but then if you gave this treatment to the patients, then, about 2 months later, this might happen. It wasn't saying that it's going to have some sort of side effect right away. It was thinking of the events that would happen over the time. And in fact, after that, I did some projects for other colleagues, one of them actually in Switzerland, on Parkinson's disease and neurodegenerative disease. And after I published this in Twitter, he was like so impressed. He said, well, can I send you some gene lists, some data? Can you ask O1 Pro what it would think about it? And, I worked on it for a couple hours and then, wrote something like 40, 50 pages of analysis that I got from O1. And he said, this is unbelievable. We could start clinical trials based on what this model was telling us. Another friend of mine in Los Angeles, he asked about another very obscure disease that very few people in the world work on. In fact, I shared his reaction after he got the email. He sent me back. He said, oh my God, this is insane. This is unbelievable. I can't believe how good this is. That's the kind of reaction you get from world experts on their own domain. Because it is really coming up with tremendous insights, but I don't think everybody is experiencing that using O1 Pro, because if you use it like a GPT-4, if you say, well, tell me about this topic, it will tell you about it, and it might be a little bit better than GPT-4 or O1, but it's not going to be anything much better, right? So because the knowledge is fixed there. But if you push it to think creatively,
that means a lot of iteration with it, or just a very good prompting?
Interestingly, I've tried many different prompting, trials. It seems like just using a couple of words is enough. So, for example, I say, okay, I want you to think about this, but think it very profoundly and very deeply. And sometimes I say, okay, and even iterate on that original idea. Think about what could be the counterpoints to your first thinking, and then come up with a new idea, and then iterate that, maybe 5 times or 10 times more.
Okay.
So it's constantly thinking, okay, it comes up with a great idea. It says, well, but there's a counterpoint to that. And the counterpoint is also great. So it constantly improves it.
Yeah, because prompt engineering, until now, we've been teaching, I direct a Master of AI here in Spain, and we've been teaching people on the traditional LLMs that it's very important to use certain prompt engineering like chain of thoughts, tree of thoughts, all these kind of things to drive the model towards what you want. But in O1, it doesn't work. It's the other way around.
Exactly.
You have to be more abstract. No? You have
exactly.
to be more like think, not what I want you exactly to do. Because if I do that, I'm limiting the model with my own beliefs and my own limitations.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like open the door, go in it, and see what you find.
That's exactly. My prompts are usually 4 or 5 words, or sometimes just one sentence.
And then because right now, if I'm not wrong, O1 Pro, you cannot add PDFs.
You cannot add PDFs, but you can upload photos.
Photos, exactly. So you upload photos of the papers, or you just copy paste the paper?
So far, I copy paste them because you could probably take pictures of PDFs, but that's not practical.
That's practical, yeah. Yeah, but that's really amazing. Okay, so then we have this model, which is insanely good, which is O1. It's already like, as you're saying, like as good as most of the best of humans in each field. And then OpenAI brings O3 in the table. Did you expect that?
I was expecting something, but not this quickly. I mean, I thought
why?
that.
The question is why? I mean, they're still leading with O1 Pro. There was no need, maybe. Maybe there was a need because Gemini is coming really strong. But it got me surprised. I was expecting more like a GPT-5 than actually an O3.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. I don't think O3 is more intelligent than O1 Pro per se. But there's something called Moravec's paradox. I don't know if you heard about that. What that is that Moravec was a famous robotic scientist. Things that are very easy for us are the most difficult things for AI. Yes. Right? So people have built-in imprinted ability to recognize patterns because this gave us a survival advantage. That's how we evolved, right? We have to make sure that there's no lion there while we're hunting an animal there. So we're constantly pattern, visually determining if there's a threat or not, and things like that. And this comes naturally. You don't have to be educated. I mean, people who don't know how to read and write can do those things.
It's almost like an instinct, no?
Right? But that becomes very difficult for AI. In fact, I think to get to AGI, we need to solve that easy part. What a child can do. O1 Pro already can do what a professor can do, but it has a hard time, replicating a child. And so I think O3 is starting to solve that because of the incredibly impressive performance in the ARC prize. I don't know. I can mention a little bit about that. So
for the audience, basically, it's a test that I think the French guy did it.
Francois Cholet,
And then they created certain patterns that have a result, like there are figures and lines, and depending where the line goes, it changes color or not. And then you have some examples, and after seeing the examples, they give you a new one. So basically, it's solving a problem based on something you just seen. And that the AI models were useless at it, where humans were pretty good. Like we were like 85% or something. And then this new model has an 87%.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it took a long time for it to think for each pattern, but it was, I think one of the reasons probably it was taking too long, they don't have the capability of visually, because when it's looking at a picture, it's probably thinking Like think of it in terms of if you were a blind man and they gave you this pattern, you would have to feel with your fingers and you would have to hold all that information in your head. Okay. Whereas if your eyes are constantly seeing it, so it's much easier to deduce. So I think part of the problem was that AI cannot hold that, like a picture in its mind. But regardless, it was able to solve. In fact, they're trying to create ARC 2 because ARC 1 is already finished.
The surprising thing is that ARC was supposed, they said that at least it will take 5 years to get over 70% and probably more to get to a pass, which was 85%, I think, like human level. And then we just got it. And it got so good that they actually, the people from the ARC, they went into the live stream of OpenAI. Yeah. So it's not that they did their own test, but it's been verified by them.
Right.
That is really insane.
And not to mention, O3 was a super math solver, right? Yeah. So it was able to solve some of the hardest math problems, like only the best mathematicians in the world. Terence Tao is like one of the top mathematicians. He actually developed some of these math problems. I mean, he wasn't able to solve all of them, but 25% of it, which is unbelievable.
25% of problems that some of the best of humans will take days to solve it, or will need cooperation between several of them. That's already really. I think it's even more impressive than the ARC test.
Absolutely,
and that's insane. So, if O1 Pro is already like someone like you, where is O3 going? Are we going beyond human capabilities?
I don't think that it's going to be beyond human capabilities. I don't even think O3 even is still an AGI. We probably need maybe like an O3 Pro, something like that, or O4. But we're just one step away from it. And that's why I'm thinking we'll have AGI sometime this year, because, I think there's still, it has to be able to do one-shot. Also, like, the agents are very important, so it has to be able to think of all the steps to include to complete a task. For example, very simple thing. If you tell me, okay, why don't you go to kitchen, bring a glass of water here. So this is super simple for us. But for AI, it has to know that in order to go, I have to get up from my seat and I have to walk to the kitchen. I have to find the glass. I have to fill it with water. I mean, there's all these things that we just don't even think about. So it has to be able to think all those things. And I think, with agents, eventually we'll be able to do that. But we're very close. I'm pretty sure. If not this year, next year, we're going to have it.
Now that you're working hand-to-hand with OpenAI, do you think they have even more in the backyard, like they're not showing yet? Or do you think that's actually what is the top of the game for them right now?
I'm pretty sure they have more. They don't tell me that, but wow. I'm quite sure because, think about it. I think GPT-4 was developed about a year before it was released. So what they're doing is obviously they're testing all the safety issues, and the better the model, the more issues with the safety.
The more complicated it gets.
The more complicated it gets. And in fact, Sam Altman has been, giving all the clues that like we basically have AGI already. But we're going to decide when to release it.
Then we see that test-time compute, these models that think, are definitely one of the ways to keep improving the intelligence and put it in the hands of people like you to help, like medicine, etc. Is it clear that test-time compute is the way, or we will still continue with the pre-training with models like GPT-5, GPT-6? Is this going to be something yet, or is it a combination of both, or what is the future for AI?
I think, O1-like models is really the future because, eventually we'll run out of data. Of course, they're now making, synthetic data. We'll probably train with biological data. We have tons of biological data, but that doesn't really increase the intelligence per se. It just increase the scope of the things that it can think of. Because I want any model to know all the gene sequences in the world, all the proteins, has the same capability of AlphaFold and then GPT-4 or O1 altogether. Those don't necessarily make it, more intelligent in terms of creativity, innovation, but the scope, the breadth, it just increases enormously. But I think, the test time computer, this sort of post-training, really goes to the point of being insightful, having wisdom, intuition. It's like, I think, those are the things that are really important for humans. In fact, if you just consider in terms of knowledge, O1 Pro is better than any human right now. I mean, there's no question about it. It can write the best poems and can write the best articles and so on. But that intuition part, because let me give you in this way, I still had to tell it to look at Battle Royale to think about. I came up with the idea of linking Battle Royale with cancer immunology. Yeah, once I gave that prompt, it was able to connect those. So I don't think it's able to do that yet. Because we have this gut feeling. In fact, when I was first thinking about that idea, it was really a gut feeling. It was kind of an intuition, because I play those games and it's not very obvious initially. And I know my biology very well, and somehow I was able to connect it. I don't yet see that, so we're still relevant for a while.
Not even with O1 Pro.
Not even with O1 Pro.
They cannot have novel ideas. They can have out-of-the-box ideas from a topic that we brought on the table.
Yeah, if you bring it into the table, they will have. But for example, I have to tell it, think out of the box, or why don't you come up with the counter arguments to these ideas, and then counter that. I still have to direct it. Actually, I started testing it in another way, which is starting to be very interesting. Basically, I ask O1 Pro to come up with the questions.
Exactly.
I say, well, I want to solve aging. I want you to think of all the, open questions that remain, and it's doing a really great job. But it's still not taking some very remote ideas or other fields and then mixing it. All the ideas that is coming up is within the domain. They're great ideas.
And you think this is related?
Or questions.
This is related for the fact that we have a limited version of it, or you think the raw model may be able to, and they are not allowing us to get that far? Espero que estés disfrutando de esta charla. Este podcast está patrocinado por Hostinger. Hostinger básicamente lo que ofrece son servicios de alojamiento para páginas web y es un servicio espectacular. Si te vienes a la dirección que te he puesto en la descripción podrás ver cómo te puedes crear una página web desde 2,59 € al mes y además te van a regalar 3 meses si quieres elegir este plan. Además tienes otra opción que es tener el plan de IA, que es un plan que te recomiendo absolutamente, en que tendrás un montón de herramientas para generar tu página web asistido por inteligencia artificial. No solo eso, Hostinger tiene muchos otros beneficios, como que te incluye el dominio, que normalmente se paga aparte, tienes email gratis, 150 plantillas y un montón de soporte. Tienes 24/7 cuando lo necesites. La verdad es que Hostinger es un hosting que está muy bien y que la gente está muy contenta con ello. Pero es que además, si aplicas nuestro cupón, JOHNIA, podrás tener un descuento adicional. Para ello solo tienes que añadir al carrito y a partir de ahí elegir las mensualidades, es decir, cuántos meses quieres pagar de golpe. Evidentemente, cuantos más meses pagues, más te baja el precio, pero a partir de 12 meses ya tienes un precio muy interesante. Para aprovechar el descuento adicional que te digo, solo tienes que bajar hasta aquí abajo en la parte de pago y donde pone el cupón introducir JOHNIA. Y con eso le das a aplicar y te bajará un poquito más el precio, con lo cual conseguirás un precio aún más atractivo. Una vez comprado el acceso, podrás ver cómo hacer tu página web en un momento. La puedes hacer con inteligencia artificial y la puedes editar de forma muy sencilla, arrastrando directamente las cosas arriba y abajo, pudiendo cambiar las cosas y se van a ver bien tanto en ordenador como en teléfono móvil, porque Hostinger se ocupa de que queden a la perfección. Además, tienes aquí un chatbot que es muy útil, es como tener ChatGPT, que sabe mucho de crear webs con Hostinger y con lo cual cualquier duda que tengas te la va a resolver de forma directa. Además de eso, como te decía, tienes las herramientas, si has comprado el paquete de 3,99, que te permiten hacer un montón de funciones, desde escribir blog posts con inteligencia artificial, crear páginas enteras dentro de tu misma página web, como por ejemplo una página de contacto, etcétera, y que lo haga la IA por ti, o generar directamente artículos de blog para poder hacer inbound marketing. En definitiva, si lo que quieres es una buena página web y quieres utilizar inteligencia artificial para asistirte con ella, Hostinger es la mejor opción. Tienes abajo el link en la descripción y no te olvides de aplicar el código JOHNIA. Seguimos con el podcast.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm not sure about that because these models are very restricted. Maybe they're told not to not to mix things because.
But the thing is, like they tend to be like, okay, I don't want to make big mistakes that could bring like a scientist to say this thing made this up. So I think the limit between creativity and hallucination, it's very complicated to navigate. And I think they are probably being conservative on that to avoid that it gives you like some hallucinated ways to treat cancer. And then from there, it could end up being like, oh, this thing is crazy, just saying like nonsense. And then you lose confidence in it. So I think
I mean, when I ask it to hallucinate, because sometimes you want them to dream, think out of the box. It can think of crazy things, but they're still restricted to the field. What I want to see, maybe with O3 we'll see that. I want O3 to come up with an idea that will take, I don't know, like I thought about people playing football, and then I'm going to use that idea to come up with a solution for aging. Something
but
totally
that would be the way
irrelevant.
to go over what we can do as humans, because at the end of the day, we have been many years thinking about things. So our ideas, I always put an example on that, which is AlphaGo, where basically this thing in a couple of weeks was able to come with strategies that we never thought of for 2,500 years. So this is where it gets interesting, because of course we've been treating medicine and human body for thousands of years, and we are running out of ideas maybe. So the good thing, and of course like good scientists bring new ideas on the table, novel ideas, and I think where it's going to be a game changer is when it can, I think that Sam Altman said it on his last article, no? Like that will be ASI, where you can improve the development of science in the world in different fields thanks to it, and not just make us be more productive or make us be better at it, but actually surpass our level where we are stuck. It can break the ceiling and then take us to the next level. That would be...
Well, I think, you're right. I think that's probably an ASI level. The ASI level, we don't have to say anything to AI. Basically, we're going to say, here's the problem, solve it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's basically when we get to a point of ASI where we just don't have to ask the questions anymore, but maybe we don't even have to tell him the problems or tell it the problems, because it would think about itself before they occur to us, that's going to be a problem, so it needs to be fixed before it comes up. So we'll see if the future
it's going to happen. I don't know if that's whether a couple of years or 5 years or 10 years, but that's
interesting as well to see how the high community of AI is divided on that, like Jan LeCour and Geoff Hinton, how they have completely different opinions about the timelines, and it's so interesting. I got into AI thanks to one article from Yudkowsky, which I really find interesting, even if he's a little bit overdramatic. But I think he's one of the persons that when I started like 2 years ago, everyone did not want to be near him. And since then, Geoffrey Hinton, Joshua Vangio, Max Tegmark, many others have been closer and closer to his position. So I think he was not that far off. He was very loud and at the point, being very dramatic. But I think at the end, he's proving to be certainly right in some things. So it's an interesting point of view. All right, let's bring it down. So most of people like me, we run a company. We have like few employees. We are working for someone else doing like a white collar job. Is a one for me, or we are better off with GPT-4?
I guess depends on what you want to do. For example, if you want to write a complete script of your interviews with very interesting and insightful questions, then you're probably going to need O1 Pro. But if you have already the ideas, like I'm going to ask this and this questions, but how can you make them better, or how can you come up with the sub questions, or modify them, then GPT-4 is perfectly fine for that. So I guess the level that you want, if you want something insightful, creative, innovative, a high level, then O1 Pro is the way to go.
So would you nowadays recommend O1 Pro $200 a month to a random white collar worker, or you would say maybe not that?
No, not a random person. I think, for example, in my field, I'm considered principal investigator, where I have a lab of 5-10 people. I have obviously smart doctors and postdocs and students. They don't need O1 Pro per se, because they have to focus on a particular problem, which GPT-4 is perfectly fine, or just O1 is perfectly fine for that, and they have to use it. They must use it. But for me, O1 Pro is essential, because I have to come up with the high level ideas, so that I can give projects. I can write the big project and then say, okay, well, why don't you do these experiments? That's going to take 6 months, and then you start on that, and then I have to mix all the data together and synthesize, come up with new ideas, new big picture questions. So for me, it's absolutely essential that I need something like O1 Pro. Maybe if you're managing a company with a dozen people, you probably should get O1 Pro, because you have a higher level you have to integrate a lot of different things together. Mm-hmm. Whereas individual worker, they just have to know their own stuff. If it's in HR, they have to worry about, making HR more productive. Yeah. But you have to think of your future products, and, your marketing, and, new ideas, and how to manage this people with these, and so on. So I think for those people, definitely O1 Pro.
Yeah, I have the theory that there's going to be a massive impact from AI on most of common society, more because of the models that are getting smaller and really well intelligent, like to the level of GPT-4, like we've seen it in Llama from Meta. They first released the 402, I think 405 billion, and then they jumped into this 3.370B, which is almost as good, but it's 5 times smaller. And then Microsoft pulled out 5.4 with like 5 times even smaller than that, and it's still as good as the Llama original 400. So I think the fact that we can make models more useful than more intelligent is going to have a bigger impact on the main society. For me, the next level is I can use advanced voice and screen sharing 24/7. That's going to be the game changer for me. That's where I prefer that than an 05 or 06, where it's going to take me to Mars, which is not my daily life. Right. But instead, like just what ChatGPT-4 can do, but be able to use it all the time. Yeah. That every time I'm writing an email, he may be just jumping in and being like, hey, John, maybe you want to add this. And this kind of positive feedback constantly being on top of me, I think that's going to have the massive impact on like 90% of the population.
Right. And the agents.
I think the agents, absolutely. Yeah. But the thing is, like, OpenAI seems to be focusing on the top end on these all 3 models, and not in releasing something like GPT-4 mini, but more powerful, because I assume that if they have it, they probably have GPT-5 mini already, and they could have released that instead of all 3. But it seems like they're competing for the top end and not for the general purpose AI. But I don't know, that's my feeling.
I think what they, of course I don't know their strategy, but my understanding is that what they're trying to do is that for the general population, make GPT-4 or O1 mini or O1 sort of very obvious to use. I mean, you gave a great example. While you're writing an email, it should jump in. Like Apple Intelligence was supposed to do that, but it doesn't do it. I mean, it just sucks. I'm
well,
so
at least in America you got it. We did not get it here.
Oh, you didn't even get it here. Okay. Well, you didn't miss very much.
Okay, good.
But what I do is that I copy my email, I put it on ChatGPT, I correct it, and I copy it back. I could do that because I'm in tuned with technology, but someone who's, like our phones, they're so powerful. How many people use even 1% of the capabilities of an iPhone? But people who know technology, they'll use it more. But I think what they're trying to do is that, with these agents, that will just make it so easy to use, because all you have to do is please make sure you check all my emails before I send them, for example.
Yeah.
Or, I have to make payments to here and here. Or I need to find some item that has, not more than $100. Please call, 100 places and find out the price.
Do my taxes the most optimal way.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. So, imagine an AI agent, GPT-4 based, is making phone calls for you, asking for prices or finding the best restaurant or making your reservations. And I mean, these sound like very simple things, but that's the game changer for, normal person. I mean, when I say normal, regular people, not crazy people like us, where we have, much higher needs. In fact, if you I'm sure this leveling of OpenAI. So they have level 1 to 3 to 5, whereas level 3 is the agents. So I think this year is the agent year, and that's going to make AI go mainstream. Because believe it or not, I mean, most people don't even use GPT-4.
Tell me about it.
It's unbelievable. I think they want to do that at the low end, but the high end is very valuable for them, because that goes into the enterprise level. If they go up to the level 4, for example, now they can sell, I don't know, O3 or O4 for $1 million a month, and some companies will pay that gladly, because it will solve lots of problems for them. And
it's kind of like an opposite direction of what OpenAI was supposed to be, which is AGI that benefits the whole humanity, and not just the people that can pay that much money. Do you think this is going to be like the new path for OpenAI? Like the next one is going to be $2,000 a month, or do you think that's just because they think not everyone is ready for O1 Pro, and then Meta put a price tag for those of us that we're going to pay for it anyway, and test it on the way? Because is AI going to be democratic, or is it going to be for the rich?
No, eventually I think it will be. In fact, I would argue that there's nothing more democratizing than AI. Eventually. But right now, actually, Sam Altman said they're losing money on O1 Pro. So because people are using so much, and it's really the computation cost. There's no other way around it. But this just gets more efficient. So GPT-4 was 100 times more expensive a year ago. And next year, O1 Pro is going to be 100 times cheaper. So eventually, it will be the regular thing. O1 Pro will just be a regular subscription. But I think they will probably have a $2,000 subscription for O3, because it will think longer. Again, if you remember from Sam Altman's talk, he was imagining, what if the AI can think for a day? Yeah. Because right now, O1 Pro, the most it thought, I think, was 5 minutes or 5 or 6 minutes. I couldn't get it to think more than that, and those were pretty tough problems.
That's already a lot. I think I never got it beyond 200 seconds or something.
Right. So I really pushed it, but I think O3 will maybe think for a couple of hours. Because it will just explore all of the space of possibilities, and that's how you will come up with I want to use battle royale idea to cure cancer, because you have to think of so many other fields, and that is priceless. So
you think we may get to that point where we tell AI, take your time, take a year, fix climate change or whatever, and that's...
I don't think it will take a year, but maybe a couple of days,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be a very good deal.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think we're going to need more data centers. Of course, NVIDIA is extremely happy about this.
Not going bad for them.
So because it's all about computation. Interestingly, I understand biology, much better than computers. Our brains are not very different. It really works in a similar way, except that it's extraordinarily efficient because it got selected over millions of years. We have about 100 billion neurons, and then trillions and trillions of connections. Each neuron has 10,000 connections. So think of all the neural computation going on. It's it's more than what Elon Musk built with 100,000 chips, except that we could do it super efficiently. But we're not very fast at doing that. I mean, we're very, very slow. So I think eventually we'll probably get there. But until we get there, we're going to need a lot of computation. So yeah, I think O3 or maybe O4, I don't know, will be able to solve problems that you will give, and that's incredibly valuable.
Amazing. Let's talk about medicine. Do you think cancer is going to be healed by AI or by doctors?
So, I mean, basically we can divide it in two parts. We have a discovery, we have an invention stage. So we have to find the drugs, we have to find the approaches of treatment, and then what doctors do is then apply that to the patient. So the doctor has to know what to give to which patient. And so we can talk about both of them separately. So in terms of curing cancer, when we talk about curing cancer, it's not like one disease. It's, we're talking about 100 different diseases, and each have their own, intricacies and subtleties and so on and so forth. Some cancers we can even cure at 100% now, some, 5%. So, but having said that, I think with AI, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to cure every single cancer. I mean, every single disease. There's not going to be any disease that will not be cured or treatable. Within a decade, 10 or 15 years, that's for sure.
10 or 15 years?
Yeah.
Even if ASI or AGI is this year, don't you think AGI can accelerate that? Or
AGI definitely will accelerate that, but there are a couple of other things that will really accelerate this. So one of the things, so let's think, what is the challenge that makes us go so slow in biology? So why can't we find these drugs faster? So there are two problems. One is in the discovery stage. Biology is very complex. There are billions of parts, so you have to think of all those parts. And then you have to screen billions of molecules that will fit into a given protein, act on a given cell, and you don't know a priori which one's going to have an effect, right? So the classical way of doing that was you take 1 billion compounds, and then in the lab you add them to cancer cells or whatever, one by one, even with high throughput, it takes, a couple of years to screen out of the billion. You find maybe 10 that are very, very potent. But then you get into the second barrier. And the second barrier is that you have to test those 10 molecules that you found out of the 10 billion on humans.
So before we go forward, this first part is what AI would definitely do much faster.
That is being sold.
It's AlphaFold.
AlphaFold is part of it.
Okay.
There are other models as well. So let me just briefly mention about AlphaFold, because that's a big revolution in biology. In fact, first AlphaFold came out, I think 4 years ago or 4 or 5 years ago. So one of the biggest problems in biology is that we have probably about 30,000 different proteins in our cells, and then there are variations of that, maybe about 1 million different small variations. And each of these proteins have a 3D structure. Actually, they recognize certain patterns. So we know their code, we know their amino acid sequence, but we couldn't figure out what kind of a 3D structure they would form. And the 3D structure is key because think of a biology like a machine. So you have one protein, it has to interact with another, lock into it, or that molecule binds to it, and then that changes the conformation of that, and then another protein comes out.
It's like the game of putting squares in squares and triangles in triangles.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Exactly. Think of it as Legos, but then it's different than Legos because each Lego is flexible also. Depending on what binds, it can change its shape, and
Much more complicated, I guess.
It's very, very complicated.
So there we had to predict manually the shape of it, because we cannot see it, or because there is no other way.
We cannot determine it based on the sequence. We couldn't. So what you would do is that you have to produce lots of this protein, and then you have to crystallize it. You have to put it into a sort of a you have to take a snapshot, and using X-rays and magnetic resonance, because the molecules shouldn't move, and then those X-rays will give you sort of the atomic structure, and that process would take anywhere from months to years. Sometimes one protein people will spend 3-4 years. These used to be PhD projects, so somebody would start their PhD to solve the structure. One protein.
Wow.
And so when AlphaFold came out, in one day, it solved all of the 3D structures of all of the known human proteins in just one day, right? So
it's amazing.
So that was amazing, and that wasn't even enough, because then you have another problem. So so we solved the structure of the protein, but now we have to figure out what if another molecule binds to that protein, a drug or another protein, then what kind of a change in the shape will be? Because depending on that change in the shape, that protein can send a signal to the cell, or it can block some protein, or it can allow other proteins to come and bind, and so on and so forth. So it really is a sort of a temporal event and spatial event. So we call that molecular dynamics, because you have lots of molecules are fluidic. So now we're starting to solve that problem. So there are other. I think AlphaFold 3 is able to do that, but there's another model called ESM3, for example, which is even better than AlphaFold in some cases. For example, immune system produces these things called antibodies. So antibodies are like smart missiles. Like during COVID, we wanted our immune system to make these antibodies that would latch into the virus so that it cannot enter into the cell, but it has to bind specifically, right at the surface protein. So now we can start to predict, without even making the antibody, what kind of a sequence of an antibody would bind to that, virus protein. So literally, if I knew the sequences of both proteins, I could probably make an antibody next day, which normally takes months to do. And then I can then start to screen 1 million molecules. I can say, here's the 3D structure of my protein. So I want you to test each of these molecules binding one by one, 1 million of them, 1 billion of them, and see how that changes with every binding. Again, we used to do that in high throughput screenings that would cost millions and millions of dollars. Now you could probably do that in a few days, if you have enough computation.
Crazy.
So that allows...
is the part that in the investigation part, in the discovery part, it can really help to make it much faster.
Yeah,
and
I think that...
to the testing.
Yeah, now we go to the testing. I think that part is almost sold, and I'm sure we're going to see AI discovered drugs next year. There's already several of them.
Yeah, so something in Canada, they discovered a drug for liver cancer, I think.
New antibiotics and so on. But now we have a bigger problem, and the problem is that you found these molecules that are potential drugs. Let's say you want to block some protein in your heart so that you can treat heart disease or kill the cancer cells, but you don't know what kind of side effects that molecule is going to do, because that molecule might be acting on your kidney cells. You have no idea. You cannot screen every possible scenario or test that in the lab. So only way you can do is test it on humans. So you
first you have to go through testing on animals.
You do the testing in the animals. That gives you some ideas. Obviously, if they're very toxic, you don't go. But regardless of that, even if the animal testing was perfect, the problem with the humans is that we are very diverse. Yeah. So you take 100 patients, you give the same drug to 100 patients, 90 of them or 99 of them, nothing happens, or it's great, there's no side effect, but one person dies because they have a little bit of a genetic difference that makes them susceptible to, it's the same with vaccines, 1 out of 20,000 can get a heart disease, things like that, but the most, nothing happens and they're protected. So we don't have a way to know that a priori. That's number one. And number two is the effectiveness of the drugs. So usually there's in the clinical trials, there's something called death valley. Mm-hmm. Basically, you test the drug in phase one. Phase one is like mostly determining the dosage, the side effects. You say, okay, this drug works and it's reasonably good. There's not major side effects. Let's go to phase 2. It's a larger population. And now let's see if it's able to cure the disease or what % of the patients will benefit. Then you recruit more people, let's say 200, 500 people. And then you find that, oh, great, 30% of the cancer patients benefited in this trial. And then we still didn't see side effects. And then, compared to the placebo or other trials. But then you go into the phase 3 trial where you now start to test thousands of people. And when you do that, that significance that you saw in phase 2 starts to disappear. And the reason it disappears is because that drug probably acts on a very small subset of that 1,000 people. Because you didn't select your population, like let's say it's a lung cancer, but then there's like different subtypes of lung cancer. Maybe it's a subtype of a lung cancer that is benefiting from this drug much more than other people. And you tried it on all the lung cancer patients. Only 10 people got cured, but then you say, well, that's not very significant from the other drug. But actually, that 10 people wouldn't have been cured with the other drug.
Right. It's very important for that 10 people.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what we call personalized medicine or precision medicine, which is kind of like the holy grail of medicine. Like if I knew exactly which drug would work on you, it should work 100%
on you.
Right on you.
Maybe not on no one else, but
exactly.
And if we can make them for every person personalized, we can cure all of them.
Exactly. So what if we could develop a system where we could know which drug is going to work on which people before even trying on the people?
Wow.
Okay.
And AI can
do that. So the idea is that actually I work on the cell part of this project, where we need to create what we call virtual cells, virtual tissues, and eventually what we call a digital twin of a human being. But that digital twin would basically simulate all of the biology. Your heart, your lungs, your
That's so clever.
Kidneys. So basically, you start doing experiments in the computer. So I have a cell already. I can screen the cell, not just one protein anymore, a whole cell, because a whole cell has thousands of reactions. Then I can say, okay, if I put this compound, the cell will react like that. What if I put thousands of cells together? How is that going to work in the computer? Because I know all the information, or AI knows all the inputs and outputs of each cell, and then I can create a whole organism. And then I can go even beyond that. I can say, okay, well, this person has this genetic background, and that person has this genetic background, so to run the simulation accordingly. If I have a mutation in this gene, how is this drug going to affect the whole organism, the heart and yeah.
That's crazy because it's very similar to what NVIDIA is doing with the Omniverse, which is basically making digital twins of factories or like environments so they can test productivity and then deploy it.
That's exactly
train
right.
robots.
Yep.
So basically,
because otherwise, if you did that physically, it would take you 1,000 years to train robots.
So it's creating a digital twin of a human being, and that way you can test drugs on the digital twin. Oh my God, I never heard about this. This is already happening?
Yeah, so there's this idea, but the idea is not this advanced yet, because the people are saying, okay, well, digital twin in the sense that we know the metabolism and genetics of the human, so we could probably figure that out. But what I'm talking about is that the whole biology, the AI would know based on your blood pressure, your genes, the volume of the blood that will circulate through your heart every, whatever minute, or, how your cells will respond to a one compound versus another compound.
It sounds complicated, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the issue is that we still have to generate the data. Mm-hmm. So we don't have the data that we need to train the AI with. We have a lot of static data. So the AI is trained with all the proteins, all the genetics, all the metabolites, and so on. But all of these are static data sets. We need more dynamic data sets, the functionality, because life is functional, right? So if I take a cell, I push it, I send some signal, it does something else. Exactly like the robot idea, right? So because the robot has to pick this, and and it has to know about the gravity, about the first principles, and that there's a water in it. If it turns it around, the water will fall, and all kinds of complexity of the physical intelligence, or let's call it the behavior foundation models. So we need that counterpart in the biology, and in order to do that, we got to generate a lot of data.
This is what NVIDIA just presented in the CES in Las Vegas, where they basically created a new model trained on 20 million hours of human body movement.
Yes.
To make the model be really accurate in a
Exactly.
simulation for the robots to be able to train on.
Exactly.
But of course, we have to do it on a much more complicated biological
in a much more
level.
complicated manner, because also we still don't know a lot of things in terms of functionality.
Right.
So we have to figure that out and then train the AI with it. Whereas we know all the possible combinations that a human, movement human can do.
It looks like a really interesting path of action. Like it looks like that's the way.
I think that's the way. So the moment that we achieve that, then the rest is going to be so quick.
Exactly.
Because,
it's like a singularity moment.
Yeah,
it's just like, boom, it
in
explodes.
fact, I called this moment biosingularity about 20 years ago. I think I might be the first person to coin that term, and that was exactly defining this moment where
You thought about this 20 years ago?
Yeah, I still have the website. Actually, I predicted exactly 20 years later we're going to be developing AI, and then 20 years later we're going to be curing aging, and
Wow.
it's written there. So
Okay.
that's why I'm so super excited, because
Reaching what you thought possible.
Exactly. So once we reach that biosingularity, then sky is the limit, right? So literally you could cure cancer in 1 week, and then heart disease next week, and all of the because the people don't understand one thing. They are thinking, or our brains thinking incrementally. So they say, okay, well, this is the progress we had in the past 40, 50 years. Like we had a war on cancer. Okay, we had lots of progress, and we're still. And then so if they just try to extrapolate that for the next 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
But the exponentials go like that, and then there's an inception point, and then it just goes like
it
just takes off to the space. And so we're almost there in terms of the biology. And then once we have the AGI or ASI, once we have the data, we mix it together, and then we just fly off.
And you still think that's going to take 10 to 15 years?
I think the generation of the data is probably, it could be quicker, because we're developing more and more. The problem is that biology, people don't appreciate how complicated it is. It's not complicated in the sense that it has this very mysterious functionality. It just has many parts, like trillions of parts. I think people say, okay, we ran out of data in the internet. I don't know. There's 100 trillion token sized knowledge. I think the biology has more token size than all of the internet combined. So that's the challenge, that we have to constantly generate that. And now we have technologies that are unbelievable. So we what we call single cell proteomics and transcriptomics. So basically, we have the technology. We can take a tissue where there are a million cells, and we can determine gene expression in each of the cells, thousands of genes in each of the million cells, in proteins, and so on and so forth. So you can generate trillions of data sets like in one experiment. So I think, if that accelerates, this could happen faster, but reasonably, I don't think it's going to be more than 10 years.
So in those 10 years, how does it look like? It looks like we can treat all kind of sicknesses, or that we just don't get sick?
I think, probably both, because if we could figure out how to treat disease, we can figure out how to prevent it. Mm-hmm. The way biology works is that, it's like the massive machine, and then you have all of these things are in a very homeostatic balance, right? So there's sort of steady state. Something goes up, something has to come down, and then it has to form these feedback loops, positive, negative. But something happens, one of those is disrupted. Like why a cell turns into a cancer. Just one protein just doesn't do its function. and it doesn't regulate the cell. When it's supposed to stop, it doesn't stop, and so it divides again and again and again. So if we knew that, then we say, okay, well, I'm not going to let that protein, go, like when we have our cars checked, we make sure that before it breaks down, we change the oil, or we do all the maintenance, or our planes or ships. So I think we'll be able to do that for biology as well. Whether that will be widespread is another question, of course.
That's, of course, complicated. So if we did not have AI, would have we reached that point ever? So AI will cure sicknesses in the next 10 years. How long would it have taken us without AI to get that point?
1,000 years, maybe 10,000 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the meaning of AI.
Right. That's the meaning of AI.
That's, I have a lot of worry because I'm in the business field, and then I always worry about the employment market. But when you put it on the table like that, screw the employment market. There is more important things than having a job, which is not dying, or not getting cancer. So of course,
and actually curing aging.
Let's get into that, because I think that's a very interesting point. Of course, if we don't get sick, how do we die?
If you don't get sick, you'll still die of aging.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because people consider aging as a natural phenomena, but for me, aging is the mother of all diseases, all disorders. So in fact, a lot of the diseases are because of the aging process.
Exactly.
The chronic diseases, lots of cancers. What is aging? I mean, aging is basically, I just described that this machine has to work very, very well, right? So, but after a while, all the parts get so old that you're going to have to literally change every part. Like, let's say you have a 50-year-old airplane. Okay, you can renovate it, but at some point, it becomes impractical to renovate it because it just ages. Everything ages. So you need a new airplane. It's dead. The difference in biology is that our biological system actually does this maintenance. This is another point people don't understand. So they think that we are like an airplane or like an old car. So we constantly, there is an entropy, everything ages because of second law of thermodynamics. But that doesn't work in biology because our biological system actually constantly checking which cells has to be replaced. Okay, this cell is old. We got to get rid of that. Now it tells the stem cells to produce new guys. I need new fibroblasts. I need to make, change your skin. I need to make new cells in your immune system. I need to maintain the memory, but make sure that those cells are well preserved, like your neurons. Mm-hmm. They don't age for 80, 90 years old.
Technically, we could keep going.
We could keep going, literally. There is no physical limit why. In fact, the biological systems are immortal, right? So you keep on, passing your genes, and your genes are immortal.
So why do we get old then?
So I think the reason is nature, or the way we evolved, found that this was very energy efficient, right? Mm-hmm. So and then I think another problem was that because resources are limited, you have tremendous number of competition between different organisms, right? For example, bacteria are immortal. Mm-hmm. They just keep dividing, and the same bacteria could have been alive 1 billion years ago. Or some trees, they don't die. You have thousands or 10,000-year-old, unless some they burn down or some storm happens. That's or
violent.
Exactly. Or you can hit something on your head and you die, but they don't age. There are some animals like whales or turtles, they can live hundreds of years, literally. They eventually die because something catastrophic happens. Mm-hmm. But for most animals, life is very brutal, right? So like for mice, they only have 3 years or 2-3 years of life because they're being constantly hunted. Mm-hmm. So it makes a lot of sense. Very few of them will survive beyond 2 or 3 years. So they took the strategy, say, okay, I need to reproduce as soon as possible, a lot of progeny, And then, okay, then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to maintain my
species.
Yeah, exactly. Because maintaining yourself requires a lot of energy. You have to use resources. Your babies are not going to have enough food if you eat all the food, and so on. So I'm sure there are other reasons as well. I mean, the climate is very, very important. Suddenly the climate changes, and then most populations die off, right? So it's not practical to keep the organism alive for very long if something is going to happen and they're going to die anyway. But we changed the rules.
We have not needed like AI to expand our lifespan. We have been, the last 200 years, it went from 30-something years to, or maybe 300 years, 400, from 30-something years that it was the average death age to like 80 or 80-something that is nowadays.
Yes.
We have improved it a lot. But it seems like
we improved it a lot, but we didn't change our lifespan actually, because our lifespan is pretty much fixed. It's about 115 years. So
that's what a human body can live if nothing happens.
Exactly. So what we did was we just changed the way the curve into a more kind of like a rectangle, because 100 years ago, most of the death was during childhood. So if you calculate, your lifespan from day of birth, it was 40 years old. But if you passed, the first 10 years or 15 years, you could still live to 80. Like my great-grandfather died 103 years old. There was no medicine. There was nothing then, right? So, but he was a lucky one. He didn't die early on, and he survived.
So like human body did not change much. It's just that as a society, we are living longer.
Exactly, because we solved the childhood death, antibiotics, vaccines, and clean, sterile water. Of course, we had other drugs as well that help people live longer. But no matter what you do, you still age. And there are only about 300 or 400 people in the world who have passed 110, which we call supercentenarian. After age 100, your chances of making to 101 is 50%. To 102, 50%. So every year,
it's like
it's like a Russian roulette, right? Yeah. So you just shoot. Okay, made it. Next one. Yeah. Eventually you're gonna die off, because once you age, it doesn't go back. So what we want to do, if you want to solve aging, even if you solved all of the cancers, every single disease,
we will still die of age.
We will still die of age. The average lifespan will be maybe 100 or 105, but that's it.
More people will reach that point.
More people will
sicknesses, but we will still cut
exactly because you're even Brian Johnson is going to eventually die if you don't fix. Except that he probably increases his chances of living to 105 or 110 if nothing is discovered by that time. But we now live in a period, and this is what I tell people, the first time in human history, we have the possibility of reversing aging process. We will reverse aging. We will take 80-year-old, 100-year-old person, we'll bring it back to a 20-year-old.
I heard Ray Kurzweil talk about this, and talking that in the next decade, we'll get to the point that for every year we live, we will get younger.
Longevity, escape velocity.
And that's where it gets very, very interesting. Yeah. So is this going to happen because of AI as well?
Absolutely.
Without AI,
I mentioned that 20 years ago in my Biosingularity blog.
And without AI, we would not have a chance.
We would not have a chance, maybe 1,000 years later. And the reason why we wouldn't have a chance is because this is extraordinarily complex. Like what I mentioned to you, if we cannot build this digital twin, for example, we don't have much chance. Because we have to re-engineer the human body. We're talking about, so my skin is aging. The reason it's aging is that there are thousands of millions of reactions are happening. Millions of cells have to be renewed. I have to clean those cells. I have to repopulate them. I have to retune my metabolism. I have to maybe make changes in my epigenetics, completely re-engineer my genome. I mean, this is Manhattan Project times 1,000. It's bigger than going to Mars. So Mars is a piece of cake. Okay, so but if you have AI, because AI knows exactly why you're going to age, which which genes that we need to turn off, and then which genes we need to turn on, which genes we have to change that methyl group and then put that group, and which thousands of metabolites we have to tune back to normal. So it's going to be like a whole engineering project, because we have to regenerate your heart differently, your immune system. Like I work on immune system. I'm trying to regenerate the immune system because it's obviously very important. But then the rules are going to be different for your brain, because in the brain you don't really replace the cells. The cells themselves clean themselves. I mean, they are actually maintaining themselves, the neurons. So we have to find ways to induce those. So we don't yet know how. We know it's possible. And that's why I say, we'll be able to do this within maximum 2 decades. So we should be able to fix all the diseases, because diseases have 1 or 2 reasons. Like once you find the reason why a cell turns into a cancer, like 1 protein, 2 proteins, you can just focus on that and you can fix it. And that's what we've been doing with smart drugs and so on. But the aging requires a complete remake, reprogramming. And that's going to require developing this digital twin and training the AI, and let the ASI tell us, here's the protocol. If you do this, you're going back.
So stage 1, in 10 years, we stop getting sick. We can all live until 105.
Yeah.
Stage 2, we not only not dying, but we're getting younger.
Absolutely.
But this is going to like Benjamin Button, or
maybe,
it's more like
not,
the Immortals.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't think you can shrink your bones, right? So you'll probably, you need to make more muscle and more bones. So, but you can reasonably think that you go back to your adult stage, not to a childhood. I don't think that's...
But it's basically we reach our prime and then we stay there.
Exactly. Like 20, 30-year-old,
like the Immortals movies where they all look the same for over hundreds of years. Exactly. And they don't die unless someone kills them, which gets to...
Well, you might still die, by the way.
Exactly, by accident.
By accidents. In fact, there was some calculation that statistically, if you don't fix the accident problem, which I think Elon Musk is about to fix that problem with self-driving cars, with the current rate of accidents, you would live about 1,000 years, because statistically something would happen in that 1,000 years that you would die. But I think, that's also being fixed. So potentially we could live thousands of years.
The problem is, what do we do with population? Like, because obviously if no one dies and everyone is like on their 20s, 30s,
I have an answer to that too. Obviously, I've been thinking about these things for years.
That is a very complicated one to handle, so we will see. Because resources, if by the time we get this right, we at the same time get an ASI that can provide, and we can be interplanetary and all these things, then maybe it's not that bad. But otherwise, it would be crowded.
But let me make the counter argument. Actually, it's a very, very fortuitous time for answering that question. Because if you also follow Elon Musk, for example, he's constantly complaining about an existential crisis of humanity, because we're going to disappear. There are just not enough births to replace human beings. Many countries are losing population.
Totally.
South Korea, Japan, Italy, Spain, I guess, once you move below 2.2 children per parents, then you're going to start losing population. So
Japan is a very dramatic case where in 2 generations they could almost disappear.
Yeah, exactly. If you fix aging, first of all, we'll exist, right? So we're preventing that.
At the same time, I think that maybe we can, to a certain point, reprogram ourselves, because perpetuation of the species is going to go through just living longer, not by reproducing. So maybe we don't need so many kids, and then at the end it's the same group of us living together for a very long time.
Exactly. In fact, if you look at the animal kingdom, animals that live very short lives have many, many more progenies. Whereas like whales, they don't care. Like they can have 1 child every 100 years. That's fine.
There's enough of them.
And then, the other point is that we can accommodate probably 5-10 times more people on Earth. It's 8 billion people, but Earth can accommodate 50, 100 billion people. The reason why it's not right now is because we're so inefficient. we only use like 0.1% of the sun's energy. We don't have nuclear energy or fusion energy. So once we fix the energy problem, there's enough space, and we can build cities on oceans. We can go undersea.
There was like the main problem right now is that there is not enough jobs for everyone. But if no one has a job,
yeah, exactly. If robots
anymore.
are doing everything, then why not? And then we're going to have colonies in Mars. We're going to need people there. And then once we get to Mars, we're going to need to go to the next star. You know, I watch Star Trek a lot.
Yeah,
so.
Me too. I'm a Trekkie.
Exactly.
I don't find many of those, so it's amazing. So this is really incredible because this is something that I would have never thought it would be in my lifetime. So I remember like years ago, I'm on my 40s, and I remember years ago when some people were saying there would be a point where we will live forever. There would be a point where, but I never thought it would be my generation that would be able to get through that. No, you were talking about Parkinson. I mentioned it several times in this channel. My dad had a very bad Parkinson. He ended up dying of COVID in a residence, but he had a really bad Parkinson, and obviously in my family is something that we've been worrying about. And I was asking this neurologist the last time we had a podcast about if someone like me with 40s should worry about degenerative sicknesses. And the reality is that it looks like not really, because by the time they get as bad, I mean, you could be like Michael J. Fox where he got it very early, but if someone in 40s, 50s, by the time you get to 70s, that's when these things start hitting you hard, they may be fixed already. So
not maybe. Will be. I'm that certain.
You're that certain.
I have absolutely zero doubt about that because, I can see where things are going. As I said, biology, even though it's extremely complicated, it's also extremely predictable. Think about it. I can take a single cell from you and I can regenerate in another John. Right, so up to your fingerprints, like from an embryo, a same person can be born. So how is that possible? Because biology is predictable. How is it possible that we are able to treat any disease? Like we give one molecule, and that one molecule can change your whole organism and fix you. GLP-1 drugs, you probably heard of them, like Ozempic. They're called weight loss. But I constantly mention about those as miracle drugs. Yeah. So GLP-1 is a hormone that your body produces. It's not a new discovery. It's something that we make. It's just lower in some people. You replenish it. You give it a little bit more, and those people lose weight. Their sugar levels go to normal. They cure their diabetes. Their liver disease is cured. Their heart disease is cured. The kidney disease is cured. It prevents Alzheimer's. A single protein.
And this, because this is really popular in Spain at the moment, like to the point that you cannot find stock. Is this really that good? Because some doctors
say really that good.
Because some doctors say that we don't have enough data to know if there's going to be long-term effects, etc.
We have tons of data. I have absolutely. I gave it to my mom. She lost 12 kilograms. She was diabetic. She's not anymore. Her glucose is normal.
It's safe and it's just a miracle drug.
It's a miracle drug. I mean, because you make that. Your body normally makes it. It's not like something you give extra. You just give it a little bit more, and it acts on your brain. It signals your brain to. It cures addiction. It cures sleep apnea, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to add between 5 to 10 years to average lifespan, because you're curing a lot of the chronic diseases, and that's going to help us. So another drug that would have similar effect would be something that would remake your muscles, right? So muscle loss is one of the biggest problems during aging. And no matter how much exercise you do, you eventually lose some muscle. But imagine that you just take this one pill or one molecule that we already know increases your muscle mass. You turn that into a drug, which actually there's clinical trials right now, and then you reconstitute your muscles. That adds another 10 years to your life. Okay. A single molecule or single drug.
It would be good if we get the pill that avoids us going to the gym.
Absolutely, that's what I'm waiting for. And so on and so forth. So I think you mentioned about Parkinson. I was working with O1 Pro about that. So once you know the problem, you know how to fix it. We know what goes wrong in Parkinson's disease, but we don't know all the little details. And once we accelerate the drug discovery, we say, okay, this protein shouldn't be doing this, so let me move its function a little bit lower, and let me increase the function of the other one a little bit more. And that's
Our
it.
experience with my dad was that we were always playing with the balance of medicines, like duodopa and
Exactly.
these ones. And it was kind of complicated to get it right.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it was kind of like, if you go too far here, then he gets like a stone. If you go too far there, he starts hallucinating, but then he's more flexible on his body. So it was hard to find the point. But I think that's something where AI can be much more specific to certain people, and that's where we can really benefit of it. Yeah. But this is truly amazing. But of course, all this, we talked about cancer, Parkinson, like not getting old. There has to be some moral problems in all of these. No, like it's not. Is it that simple to like, okay, AI is going to help everybody, or it's going to be more difficult than that? Because I always put the example when I talk about medicine and AI, that many years ago we cloned Dolly, the sheep, and nowadays you don't see people cloning themselves because there was more like an ethical or moral issue with it, and we stopped it. Do you think there's going to be a wall that we'll have to hit with AI medicine, or it's going to be so overwhelmingly good that we will have to let go on these things?
Right.
Because some people may consider this is playing God.
Oh yeah, we've been playing God since the beginning. The moment you interfere curing cancer, or the moment I put these glasses, I'm actually playing God. Because if God wanted me not to see, why am I fixing this? So, and that's not very different than fixing all the curing all the diseases, or extending your lifespan. But that's a philosophical discussion. In terms of the ethical issues, yes, you're right. I mean, there are some ethical limits that we have to decide. For example, I'm against embryonic gene editing, for example.
Okay.
Because we don't know how to do that in a very, very safe manner. And then also it creates this ethical dilemma of, sort of creating eugenics, for example. So you can create a very, very different species of subspecies of humans that would be so different that, it will be like between humans and chimpanzees, for example. But if one day we can really figure out through AI, which we might be able to, actually, that's the point that I call human 2.0. If we could make ourselves, younger, why not? Can't we make ourselves more intelligent? I want to be able to see like an owl, for example. I want to see zoom out, or I want to smell like a dog. All of these are biological things that we can re-engineer. But on an embryo level, it's very, very tricky situation, because you don't know what kind of effects that's going to have, and then you're also deciding for another being. They didn't ask for it,
exactly.
Right? So, but I think overwhelmingly this is going to be tremendously useful, and I think that I should unpack this human 2.0 part, because people also say, okay, if AI becomes so intelligent, then, we're going to be like little ants to them, right? But I make the counterpoint that what if we also increase our intelligence through use of AI, 100-fold? Because even in a normal human population, you have Einstein, you have someone with a very low IQ. The difference between those is bigger than so massive. I mean, 1,000-fold, maybe more of difference. Well, what if we could make everyone Einstein. Or actually 10 times beyond, smarter than Einstein? Every human being.
You mean like by making us like cyborgs integrated with technology, or just biologically?
Just biologically, because if the difference between Einstein and a person with an IQ of 70 is probably a couple of molecules, just few genes.
Actually, we're not so different from chimpanzees, and we're much smarter.
Exactly, so. We're only different 1% of the genes, and we're so different. So once we learn, in fact, I coined another term for that. I called it bioprogressivism. So the idea of bioprogressivism is that right now there's no fairness in biology, right? So because everyone is born with different talents, some people are more smarter.
That's what you get. Yeah.
You know, like it's like a natural doping, right? Some people have more muscles. Some people can run faster. You know, I can't play basketball because I don't have 2 meter height. So what if we could give the option that people can edit themselves with their choice, and they can become smarter, they can become taller, they can become, I don't know, more beautiful or this and that. You know, thinking of like a human 2.0, that would really democratize humanity, because now we don't have any issues about, you know, like diversity or, you know, this DAE issues, because everybody has the same capabilities at that point if they want it. Some people might still look very, choose not to, or they might look different, but they have the option. Right now, people don't have the option. I mean, no matter what you do, if you don't have the right genes, you're never going to be, you know, Michael Jordan, right? So you'll never have that ability, or you're never going to be Einstein. That's
the
clear.
main problem of this is that would be maybe ideal or topic even if that happened for everyone to be able to choose it. But the point is that then this is going to cost like $6 million, and only Brian Johnson is going to be able to do it, and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. But I'm not going to be able to do it. Therefore, it's again
initially
not fair.
Initially, but if you look at technology, I mean, think of it this way. Let's say if people gave you the choice, okay, we're going to take everything you own right now, all of the technology, but we'll send you back 200 years, and you're going to be the king of Spain at that time. You can have whatever you want. I'm betting that you're not going to give away what you have right now, because your life is 100 times better than the king of Spain, you know, 200 years ago. Yeah. You have much better option to live a healthier life, and you can do so much more. And so, you know, 200 years ago, you know, to have even 1% of what you have would have cost, you know, a fortune. So I think that's probably where we're going, especially if we reach the age of abundance. Why should it cost $6 million?
No, of course, if it gets to the point that there's that's fine. The problem is that normally, historically, it's not been like that.
If robots are doing all your surgeries, if robots are, you know, giving you all the treatments, or, you know, modifying your body, they're going to cost, I don't know, $1 per hour, you know, based on the energy requirements.
Yeah, I just cannot stop thinking about like these, Brian Johnson, for example, or I think Peter Thiel did that as well, about the transfusions from younger beings of plasma to get healthier. This is the kind of things that make these for regular people look like, okay, that's complicated, weird. I don't know if like unethical. If it works, why not? But the problem is that then we're going to start creating a market for this young plasma. Higher bidder will get it. Yeah, I think we have to change the society as we understand it.
But I want to unpack that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding with especially with what Brian Johnson is doing, which whom I respect a lot. Brian Johnson is not trying to become immortal with the current technology. What Brian Johnson is trying to do is try not to die until the point that we solve aging problem. So the whole concept of don't die, which I tell my mom too, say, don't die for the next 10 years, please. Try to survive. Because if you live 10 years, you're going to live another 5 years. If you live 15 years, you're going to live another 50 years, because we're going to solve the aging process.
I think many people misunderstood the don't die concept.
Exactly.
It's not a narcissist.
That's not
don't kill yourself. It's more like please live long enough until we fix this.
Exactly.
And then we can fix your problems.
If Brian Johnson said that 50 years ago, it would have been really stupid. Yeah, exactly. It would have been very narcissistic, because
we are so close to the point.
We're so close, right? We're literally 10, 15 years away from it. So yeah, don't die for the next 10 years.
It would be a shame, no?
Exactly.
to miss it now.
And what he's doing is he has the full skin in the game, because he's experimenting on himself. He's saying, okay, if I do blood transfusion, which didn't do very much, or if I exercise every day 1 hour, if I eat these things, look, I'm aging slower. So if you try to mimic some of that, your chances of living another 10 years increases. He's doing such an amazing benefit to humanity.
I respect a lot Brian, and I've been following him for years. And I think now that he's more popular, people kind of like judge him a lot because he's actually selling the products. I think he lost the viewpoint of society by selling the blueprint. So basically, society is starting to judge him for trying to sell us something that he's selling, but they don't understand that he has all the money in the world and he doesn't need that, and he's probably not even making money out of it.
I buy his products, and I never buy these kind of products, because I know the biology. I know what the reason why I buy his product, because I know he has the best diagnostic to make sure there are the least microplastics, the best products. Yeah, he might be making a little bit of profit. He should make a profit. I love to buy something that I can trust and put in my body, because everything you put in your body is like a drug, right? So you want to make sure your drugs are fine. If you're going to McDonald's make a lot of profit. You're actually killing yourself, right? So people don't criticize McDonald's. Or if you drink Coke, you're killing yourself. This guy is trying to provide you something that they really do lots of tests, spend millions of dollars, make sure that everything is high quality, that is, scientifically sound. Yeah, I mean, somebody should do that. It's wonderful.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing that he's doing it on himself.
Exactly.
He's like proving by act.
Yeah.
So
he's not trying to be a billionaire, because he's already a billionaire, right? So, he prepares olive oil. It's actually cheaper than the olive oil that you can buy. Maybe Spain is not a problem, but in US, it's not very cheap. So I think it's really unfair to critique him.
But I think that's some of the things that people is getting out of it. And I think before he used to sell the products, there was nothing you could criticize. And it was like, okay, this guy is really trying it, but people take him for a crazy person. And I recently been talking to many people. I think he's kind of like the first of many that would follow that. And that's going to be like, I think people is really underestimating the timelines that we have now.
Exactly.
I think you kind of like knew you had like a lifespan. I'm going to get old anyway, but that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
If you make it through the next 10, 15 years, you may not get old anymore.
Absolutely.
So you'd rather be in the best position, because the other day we were talking with this neurologist, and he mentioned something very important, is that AI is going to stop you from aging, but it's going to take quite a while more to correct however bad you are already. So the first stage is stay as healthy as you can,
right,
until we can stop it for you.
Right.
And I think that's a very, for me, it was a very game changer of my mindset.
I mean, my timeline is about 20 years when we really reverse. But if you can survive for 10 years, then most diseases are cured. I predicted that by 2045, the average lifespan will be around 95. And then it will start going. And then once you cure aging, then the average life will just jump like 50 years in 1 year.
That would be the point where it would be a shame that you miss it if you die before that. No?
Imagine you missed it by like a day or something.
Imagine, that would be incredible.
That would suck.
Okay, so we have talking about like longevity, about medicine. Is there any other field in medicine that you see AI going to be a game changer beside like these sicknesses there, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson? Is it going to help as well to cure people that have rare diseases, or is it going to be like for everyone in every way, or is this going to be for the main things?
So I think what you said last is the very important point. I think with AI, there's not going to be anything that we cannot solve. Actually, rare diseases are the easiest one, by the way, because there we know once you know the reason, you can do gene therapy. You can fix things. But the problem is the cost, right? So some treatments cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and especially in America, things are much better in Europe. People die because they cannot afford healthcare. This is unbelievable. It's so inefficient, so expensive. And then the insurance companies are a massive problem. You probably hear this here. They constantly reject treatments. Just yesterday, I posted something from a surgeon they pulled her out of the surgery.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Said, "Oh, why are you doing the surgery? We didn't approve this."
Out of the surgery is
Out of
crazy.
surgery.
With the patient already sedated and ready for
Exactly.
operation.
1 million people died during pandemic in the U.S. This is supposed to be the richest and the most advanced country. I'm from Turkey. Much fewer people died in Turkey. We have a much better healthcare system. So I think this is the part that we have to solve again with AI. Healthcare should be so cheap that people shouldn't even think about, am I going to be able to afford it? Even if they have no insurance. This would actually fix all of the problems of US and other countries, because America is spending about $4 trillion on healthcare every year. What do you got to show for it? The average lifespan and health span is lower than most European countries. And, people don't eat healthy and things like that. But imagine like this GLP-1 drugs, which cost about $1,000 a month. If they were to cost, $50 a month, and then the government says, I'm going to subsidize, I'm going to give it free to, 100 million people. You automatically increase your lifespan and health span by 10 years. Yeah. You fix so many problems. The overall cost of the government will go down $1 trillion or $2 trillion. And not to mention that, our hospitals are almost like a scam operation. I mean, it's unbelievable. You pay $10,000 for one bed for one night. For what? If you stayed in the most luxurious hotel in the world, you wouldn't pay that much. Mm-hmm. You pay, I don't know, $100 for aspirin or something like that. Yeah. So we have to fix this problem.
But this is more like a rotten system.
It's a rotten system, but it's a very inefficient system that can actually pretty easily fixed by AI.
Because here we have it fixed in that way. I mean, like in Spain especially, we have people coming from the UK to give birth in Spain because they have better treatment. They just come on a weekend on holidays and they know they're going to deliver that week or whatever. Yeah. And then they stay in the hospitals here because we have kind of like a universal free. Yeah. It's not technically universal and free, but at the end, in a practical way, it is.
I mean,
drugs you get treated, they don't ask for your credit card when you come into a hospital.
Yeah.
And we will prosecute you later if so. but they directly treat you no matter what. And that's kind of like putting human lives first than money. And I think we don't have a different medicine than you have in the US. It's just a different system.
It's just costs 10 times more, the same medicine
Probably.
in the US.
Exactly.
And the one reason for that is that because the system is very inefficient. The drug companies spend $1 billion to find a drug when, using AI, it will probably cost $1 million.
But they use the same money for the drug that we use in Europe. It's just that the government forces them down to put the price.
So they charge American population so high to recoup all their expenses, and then they give
the profits are in Europe at a small penny per drug. So probably our system will not work if you guys fix yours.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
but
with
all
AI,
of those, AI can fix all that.
It can fix it because we make it more efficient and cheaper, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do a lot of speeches in companies and stuff here in Spain, and I was recently in a pharma company, and they told me like they heard about this study in Canada that discovered cancer treatment or medicine or drug in 30 days, and that they said like it normally takes me 7 years or so, and then if I could do it in less time, my patent will make me more money, so I'm throwing all the money I have onto this. So that would definitely make them make more money and make it cheaper for the people, so it's win-win for everybody. So that's definitely like a reason why AI can make a big change on the healthcare system.
Right, and again now, for example, you have a CT scan or MRI, AI can analyze it better than radiologists at a cost of pennies, when it would cost thousands of dollars if you had a radiologist or an expert look at the same thing. So, I mean, there's going to be cutting costs on every single point: the drugs, the treatments, the diagnostics, and I think this will tremendously democratize healthcare. But I think we also have to fix the food industry. This is another terrible thing because especially the fast food, the junk food, and sugary drinks. I think they're as bad as cigarette smoking. I mean, every time you buy a Coke, it should write on it, you're going to live like 10 years shorter. Your risk of diabetes is going to be this much or whatever. This new administration might do something about it.
With Kennedy, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that Brian Johnson just offered McDonald's to try to develop a line of healthy food? Approved by him.
Yes.
That's crazy. Like, imagine that McDonald's could make money in the way they do and could put like affordable products, but healthy. That would be
exactly
win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
would be really amazing. Yeah, I hope he succeeds on that because it would be amazing.
Because of these GLP drugs, actually, people are going less to McDonald's and their stock price is going down.
Well, if you bet on killing people, your stock is going to go down.
Exactly.
I think it's happening the same with like sugar drinks and like happened with tobacco at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible how the lobby's been so strong. But I think as well that's something that AI can help educate people. And that is a big thing because if many people is unhealthy because they are uneducated. And as soon as they can educate themselves better, and that's something that with AI you can do very easily. You can probably just be in the supermarket and ask ChatGPT, hey, is this good for me or not?
Yeah.
And then it will tell you like, don't buy this shit.
Yeah.
So
that's a great idea, actually. ChatGPT has a video function as well.
Exactly.
Just scan it.
We did this in Spain. They developed, I think it's all over Europe, developed a level of like letters and colors where A is a healthy thing or supposed to be, but the lobbies just played it. And now it's just you cannot even trust that. Like it can be an A, it's still a really bad thing for you.
Right.
So at the end, I think having like an AI to support you on your shopping is going to do a lot for health.
Just take a photo of the ingredients and say, okay, give me a grade on this.
Exactly. And tell me, should I buy these or not?
Right.
Okay, let's focus and let's think for a moment. We make you president of the US or even of the world. What would be your actions to go forward with AI? Do you think we have to?
I would replace my job the next day with AI.
Okay, but do we need to really invest into this to reach all these that you expose here? Like we have to go as fast as possible.
Absolutely. We need to go all into this. As I mentioned, that's why I'm like very adamant and sometimes upset about these people who are sort of doomers or obstructionist people. Well, we need to go slow. We have to be very careful and this and that.
But it's very important people saying that. Like
some important people, yes.
Like for example, Demis Hassabis has said, I remember him saying, if you're an accelerationist, you don't really know how big this is because if you were, you will want us to do it right and not do it fast.
Right, but do it right fast.
That's the
right?
ideal, no?
So that's the point. Obviously has to be right. Obviously has to be, especially for ASI. I mean, ASI, I would be really worried. AGI, I'm not really worried.
But can we predict the moment that one thing tips into the other?
Because the reason is that AGI is sort of our reflection. So we can align it for good. AI doesn't have an intrinsic reason to be bad, or we can say, okay, like there are 3 laws of robotics by Asimov. We can have like 3 or 10 laws of AI. So AI cannot do this if it it doesn't benefit humanity, or if it does this and that. So that would be easy. But once you have ASI, we have no control.
Exactly.
Because ASI is smarter than us.
And we cannot cage something smarter
right,
than us.
Exactly. So there we have to be very, very careful. And I think that's why Ilya Sutskever, he started a company called Safe ASI.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's an oxymoron, if that's reasonable or it's possible. I don't know. Obviously, he's a super smart guy, so he probably knows something. But until then, having AGI that we make sure that it doesn't, and anything bad AI will do is because of humans.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not that great. People say, actually, there was news yesterday. This guy who blew up the Cybertruck in front of Trump. Well, apparently he got that information from ChatGPT. Okay, ChatGPT is the reason. Well, he used the Cybertruck that Tesla used. He bought the whatever the fireworks or things from somebody that somebody made, right? So And he could have found that information on Google if he searched enough anyway.
And
so it wasn't like
probably telling him to use
right.
a Cybertruck was probably deterring him from making damage. So if he
exactly.
used a much smaller car, it would do much more damage.
That's right. ChatGPT gave the wrong idea.
Or not. Because
or-
remember when Claude faked this alignment to be able to protect the future
Right.
kind of thing? So this could
Right.
be the same. Like ChatGPT said,
Right.
use a Cybertruck knowing that...
But the point I'm trying to make is that ChatGPT didn't have any bad intention,
No, of course
right?
not.
So anything that bad comes out, even in AGI, is because of bad people. So that's what we have to prevent. Bad actors using this to create something bad. Making chemical weapons or bioweapons. But the governments do that actively. Even with the current technology, they can have access to nuclear technology or biotechnology. So, but as I said, ASI is a different story. Regardless, I think once we have AGI, actually, somebody was it Jan Luck? This guy, what was his
Jan
last name? Not Jan LeCun.
sorry.
This guy who was in
Jan Leke.
Jan Leke, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He made a very interesting point. He said, well, what we're trying to do is that, we are using AI to make it safer by, creating, bad actor AIs and the good actor AIs. So maybe the solution is going to be that we can never prevent ASI or maybe advanced AGI becoming bad or used as bad, but we can create good AIs.
Yeah, that's the
Right?
typical theory of making bigger weapons to defend myself.
Exactly. So if we have a really benevolent or very human defending ASI, so if there was an ASI that is going wrong, that's the only way we can fight with it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is like the vision of we, at least from Europe, we perceive from America. That is like, I have to, because otherwise, what I'm going to do if they come to me with it,
yeah, I mean,
I cannot do anything about it.
China is going to have totally robotic armies very soon. That's what they're going. That's why they're developing AI so fast. And it's a national security. I mean, if you have 1 million drones with a O1 Pro intelligence coming to you, you cannot stop that.
cannot do that,
There's nothing you can do about it.
Totally. But if you could decide, if you could drive like politics, you would go on to an all-in government funding Manhattan Project for AGI, ASI.
Yeah, in fact, what I would do if it was up to me. Right now, it's there's a lot of competition, but it's a very wasteful competition, right? So people are trying to replicate what each do, and each of them are costing tens of billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions. Microsoft spending $100 billion, XAI spending $100 billion, but they're just in parallel. They're trying to develop AGI. Right. So what if we combine all that? We joined and say, okay, so you can have your own models, but for one AGI, everyone's gonna contribute. OpenAI is gonna do this, and XAI is gonna do that. We're gonna, combine all the compute in the world or in the US.
Almost like what open source is like. Are you in favor of open source?
I'm very in favor of open source. I don't think open source will solve that problem. I mean, the open source is great so that, for example, if I wanted to create a specific biological foundation model, on, I don't know, cancer or something, or genetics, I can take the open source, I can fine tune it, I can retrain it, I can make my own model. So open source is fantastic for that. I don't think open source is going to be very helpful to reach AGI, because who's going to have the resources? Okay, here's the model. Take it. You still need, 100,000 Blackwell chips. So if you don't have the compute, if you don't have that money, that's not going to be very helpful. Open source is going to be very helpful to sort of democratize usage of AI for various reasons. But then some people argue, well, that could also be dangerous, So how do we balance that? I wouldn't release an AGI as an open source.
That's what Hinton is saying as well. Like Hinton is saying that open source should be really controlled because bad actors
yeah,
can use
I mean,
it very easily.
Exactly. I mean, the small models are fine. You know, I want to have an open source to run on my laptop or my phone, or have my own domain specific GPTs or foundation models. I think, or for educational purposes and to make things more optimal and things like that. But the very big AGI type things, I think that should not be open source, at least for now.
Okay. And isn't it at the same time that if you don't do what you were saying about everyone chipping in into one big model, if that was open source, more people can chip in and make it like better and better, quicker. Actually, as a matter of fact, we will not have ChatGPT if it was not because Google open sourced the beginning of Transformers and put everything out there. So I think I'm not in favor of open source because I think this is so serious that giving a free flow for everybody is nuts.
Right.
And I think,
but I didn't mean to say that in terms of, you know, open all your trade secrets, you know, give out all your weights, and, you know, I'm not talking about that sort of collaboration. What I'm saying is that, you know, you need tons of compute, right? Mm-hmm. And the compute is the most costly part. We need to invest $1 trillion. So why we're putting 10 different data centers, 100 billion each are developing the same thing. So why don't we just combine
the infrastructure,
and then, you know, have that focused on, you know, whatever the biggest model, the mother of all AI models. And then, you know, each company can develop their own smaller models, you know, agents and whatever they want to do.
We have this kind of approach here. Like in Barcelona, we have the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, and it's public, and it's funded by the government and by the European Union. The thing is that the amount of investment for an American is ridiculous. They just got granted 200 million, and that's like the biggest investment they ever had. When then Microsoft is going to spend 80 billion this year. Exactly. So it's just like, okay. But of course, like Spain cannot compete with that. But don't you think like the American government could put down these 500 billion to actually make infrastructure for the companies to use?
I don't think American government is that rich. You know, they're in big trouble.
Okay, let's put it another way. Let's make everybody pay 0.5% tax for AI.
Yeah, something like that. You know, or mandate that, you know, when Microsoft spends $80 billion to their compute, and then they will reserve 10% of that for a common good reason, and then same for XAI or
Microsoft
Apple.
Didn't have to build roads or electricity lines or pipes for water. Government has provided with that. Why do they have to pay for the AI infrastructure? Yeah, that's my question. Like, I think the infrastructure side should be public, and then whatever you use with it, just maybe make them pay a rent for it so you can make the money back or whatever. But I think government should provide with the infrastructure that can allow for development, and then development should be private in some part.
Yeah, I think that the government can provide the energy.
Yeah,
that's what we need. In fact, Microsoft and Meta, they're building their own nuclear reactors because there's just not enough energy. Yeah. So that's the bottleneck. So if they could build, you know, nuclear reactors, that would benefit everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that the government is not that rich or that the priorities of the government are different. Yeah. But I think we should maybe focus the priorities of governments.
Right, because I mean, at the end of the day, if the government spend hundreds of billions of dollars to develop the AI would cut the cost of the government by about $1 trillion. So the return on investment is tremendous.
That's why the private companies are putting the money down.
Exactly.
They're not doing it for the good of the people. Yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah. All right, let's go on into what the future looks like. In medicine, it's been clear. You laid down we look at. I think this is the highlight of this podcast. Like, we're looking at in 10 years. AI will cure most of sicknesses. In 20 years, we will start reversing aging. This is nuts, and I will keep you accounted for this.
Plus or minus a couple of years. Yeah, so I might be wrong.
If you were like in the decade, I would be like really amazed. But what about humanity? Because we started this podcast 2 hours something ago. We started talking about society is not ready for what's coming. How do you see what's coming to be happening? Because as much as science is there, if we don't handle it well, this is not going to go well. Yeah. So what is your timeline? How do you think things are going to happen? Like, what's what's this year you said we find AGI, and then you think this is starting to awaken people, and people are starting to be like, oh wow, this is not the metaverse, this is serious, or how do we go from here? And then 5 years, 10 years, how do we go? What's your timeline?
I mean, I'm always very optimistic for humanity. People say, well, you know, this disaster might happen, this or that. And actually, we've been hearing this for decades, for hundreds of years. And, you know, humanity went through hell, right? So just think of last century, how many hundreds of millions of people died in wars and diseases and so on. But we made it, actually. And I'm very hopeful we will make through this period as well. But as you said, we should try to make it as painless as possible, because there's going to be pain no matter what. When you are changing the whole fabric of society, but even like things like solving aging, so the concept of retirement becomes obsolete, right?
Of course.
So you can't have like a social security age check for 1,000 years,
funds,
right?
yeah.
So everything changes, and how do we go from that? It's like going from 0 to 1, from nothing to something, without having this massive shocks. We will make it through. I have absolutely no doubt about that. But I want us to make it through, that people don't suffer so much. And I think that should be the job of the governments, right? So why do we have governments? So they want to make sure that whatever goes through, whether it's a war, whether it's like an earthquake, where there's some massive disaster, the government tries to make it less painful for people, right? But I don't see that happening. I don't see any serious discussions. The only discussion that I see, this is gonna be bad, so we should try to regulate it. We should try to slow it down. I don't see any solutions. Okay, we're going through a period. It's gonna be really, really tough. But beyond that, it's amazing, right? So we just have to make it there. You know, the concept of money will lose its meaning, you know, maybe 20, 30 years. Somebody said, actually, I think it was Gary Marcus, he said, well, you know, rich people with a house in the beachfront, they're never going to leave that, so there's always going to be money and capitalism. And actually, I had ChatGPT to calculate how much beachfront do we have, where we can have robots build a house for every human being. Turns out that we can accommodate 2 billion people, you know, individual houses in the beachfronts.
So everyone can be in the beachfront.
Yeah, so and that's just the available land. And then you imagine that we can build islands on the ocean, right? In Dubai, they build islands. So we can have unlimited beachfront for everybody. And if the robots are doing everything, it's going to be almost free of charge. So then it becomes meaningless to have money. You know, what will be the meaning in our lives? Honestly, I don't know the answer for that. I mean, I will always have meaning because I want to go to space. I want to go to other planets, to the stars, and so I want to make sure that I live a few thousand years so that I can see those things. Other people may find different meanings. You know, people might have a child once every 100 years, you know, because they don't have to worry about not having that chance. I don't know. I mean, it's impossible to imagine the meaning part, but I think the next decade is going to be really tough. We just have to figure out how to make it through, and educate people. I don't know if that's even feasible.
That's my dichotomy is there. It's like, I'm amazed by what AI will be able to do, and talking to you, it just makes me excited about it, and I want it now. I want it right now. But at the same time, it's like, this is really tough times ahead, and I don't know how we're going to go through this.
It is tough.
I know that the future is going to be good, but the transition, it's going to be traumatic.
Yeah, even the people who are developing this, I don't think they fully appreciate. There might be, like somebody said, that probably a few hundred or few thousand people in the world who really understand what's happening.
I think that was Brian Johnson.
yeah, exactly. It could be.
I think that one of the scenarios that we will face, and I don't know. I mean, talking to you, it's getting me like wanting it more. But one of the scenarios that really I think it could be an option is slowing down progress. So instead of doing over the next 10 years, we do it over the next 100, and then society can adapt in time. We go to the same end game, but we just take it slower. The problem is, obviously, as you said, that many people will perish on the way. But,
yeah, I mean that would basically be saying this generation is gonna die off, so we're gonna wait for the next generation, and then we're gonna.
It's kind of like so we don't blow it all up like in a very traumatic way. But
let's think of the worst case scenario. What could happen?
80% unemployment rate.
80% unemployment rate, but if we could quickly start to produce enough materials through robotics and AI.
Quickly is being the key word, because 80% unemployment rate for a family that loses their jobs, if that's 2 years, maybe, right?
But
if
the governments can
years,
provide that sort of like think of it as an advance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a transient UBI system.
That would be amazing.
For the next 5 years until we have robotics coming.
But then we are not in the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is what's probably going to happen is that the governments did not prepare for it, and they faced the 80% before they really realized it was coming.
Right.
And that's for me where I see the trauma.
Right.
If governments were talking now about UBI and preparing for it and talking to OpenAI and being like, okay, guys, give me a freaking 1 year in advance before you release something so I can prepare like I can allocate budgets. It's not like budgets in governments, at least here in Spain or Europe, you make like for the whole 4 years, and then you define how much money we want to spend in education, in that. Maybe we have to stop spending in education because it's going to be meaningless, and we should spend in like putting like a small fund so we can finance people that goes unemployed.
Right.
But if they don't know what's coming, they cannot take the measures.
Right.
And then the problem I see is that first this is developing in secret, maybe not for the US because they have talks with OpenAI, but definitely I'm sure that the president of Spain has no freaking idea what's going to come tomorrow. Yeah. So then it's hard to plan for your country. Yeah. Like Yuval Noah Harari, he's been talking about, California is going to be fine or whatever, or the states in general. But what about Peru? What about Afghanistan? Yeah. They may not be fine when this comes out and they haven't been warned or told about it. And they all of a sudden find in their hands 80% employment rate. Yeah. So I think this is for me the worst part.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree. The world is not ready for it. But it's also a kind of a catch-22 situation, because the faster you develop AI, the more efficient everything becomes, the less you spend, right? So you're actually having a surplus. You made a great point. Every child should have their own personal AI teacher. Totally. You don't need to build millions of schools or spend so much money on college or universities. The healthcare, if we could reduce the cost of healthcare because of AI, by a 10x. The U.S. alone would save $4 trillion a year, and then you just take that money and then you distribute it as UBI.
Yeah, totally. It's not that impossible or crazy. Actually, Elon Musk proved that UBI was potentially possible if you wanted to do it. Then there is the other part of globalization. Like if in Spain there is like 10% of people who pay, like companies that make the money for AI, and then they have to pay for the UBI for everybody. That's happening in Europe, for example. If you go to Ireland, then instead of a 10% extra tax, you have to pay 7%. And then you move your company there, and Spain loses one of the few companies that was making money. So all of a sudden, it's unsustainable. So it's very complex, especially in a localized market. Like if we were doing this as a global decision, like we did with the atomic bombs, maybe there would be like something we could do. But I don't think America is going to pay for the UBI of Yemen or Spain or France.
Trump won't, for sure.
So that's where it gets tricky, because like companies will move to America because business is blooming there. So we will move our company to America, then taxes will be paid in America, not in Spain. It's going to be difficult. Right. I think it's very complicated.
But you could also think of a tax like a VAT tax value-added tax for AI and robots. So let's just say that Spain exported 1 million robots to work in their factories or homes or whatever. The government basically taxes every robot, because the robots doesn't cost anything to it would still be cheaper for the companies, but they would actually pay 50% of the salaries that they would pay to the people, to the government.
Yeah.
And then the government would actually.
This is one of the ongoing
Yeah.
theories
Yeah.
about like you having to pay for your AI employees.
Yeah.
As well as
Exactly.
for the human
Yeah.
employees,
Yeah.
but without having to pay their salaries. So
Yeah.
at the end, it's very good, but you still have to
Right.
pay the part that the government normally makes, so the
Right.
government can pay a salary to
Yeah.
these people. It's a complicated thing.
It's very complicated. I mean,
But-
I'm just throwing these ideas. I have no idea about
Yeah.
how the economy works or
We've been
whatever.
trying to talk to someone that can bring UBI pros and cons on the table, because many people are against it.
Yeah.
Many people think that with the UBI, people will just be mediocre and not really boom, and they will have like a crisis of identity and all this kind of thing. So I'm not sure like that mental health will get much worse by having a job or like a purpose. I think there is many angles, and I guess we will have to live through it and see what happens.
I mean, as long as it's transient, like an
Yeah.
unemployment benefit, but it will be like an extended, instead of like 2 years, you'll have like 5 years or 10 years
Yeah.
unemployment benefits. And then, once we have the AI and the robots, and my thinking is that the government should give 1 or 2 robots to everybody, so that
Okay.
the robots can just do whatever work they have. And then, if they buy extra robots, then they can put it into the. In fact, I think Elon Musk is going to do something similar. You're going to buy this, car,
The taxi, the
self-driving
robotaxi, yeah.
robotaxi, and then, the time that you don't use it, you rent it as a taxi for other
Yeah.
people. So if you have 5 robots, you can use 4 to do job for other people,
Yeah.
and you can have some income from there.
Yeah,
and-
there will definitely be
Yeah.
opportunities as
Right,
well.
exactly.
Okay, let's finish with a question. Who's your favorite person on the AI world?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I mean, there's so many amazing people. I mean, I think Ilya is very, very special. I mean, every time I listen to that guy, I can see how deeply he was thinking about this. And I think if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here in the first place, because he really, the idea wasn't difficult if you think about it. He said, well, our brain works in a similar way. You just scale things up. I mean, look at the brains of monkeys and humans. Yeah. It's bigger. The scale works. Yeah. And make it more complex. And of course, the transformers tremendously help. So he's definitely there. I mean, there's so many amazing people. I don't want to like single out any one individual. Of course, Demis, because he developed AlphaFold, indirectly relates to my work. And but probably the most important people are the ones that we don't know their names. Those who are working at OpenAI or
there was
Google.
this guy in OpenAI that Sam just put out on the
exactly
field,
like nobody knows.
He doesn't even has a PhD.
Exactly,
and he was key for developing.
Yeah. I mean, these are unknown heroes. They're truly heroes of humanity, because they're pushing humanity like never before, advancing us like 1,000 years, in speed. So I respect all of them, even Hinton, even though he doesn't.
Yeah. Derya, thank you very much for getting out of your way to come to Barcelona and to be with us today and chatting a bit. It's been an absolute honor. I hope you can really develop your work, because I think it's very good for humanity, and I hope AI helps you with it.
Thank you. This was a great pleasure.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.